Okay, this is the October 24th, 2023 regular meeting of the Palo Alto School Board. The board is meeting in closed session to discuss conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54957.6. Agency designated representatives are Deputy Superintendent, Chief Business Officer, and Superintendent of Schools. And in the employee organizations are PAEA and CSEA. Conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, Property Carverly Community Center, with Don Austin, Trent Bahadur Singh, and Carolyn Chow as agency and negotiating parties, City of Palo Alto, under real property. And employee discipline, dismissal, release pursuant to Government Code 54957B1. The board will, I don't think there's any comments on closed session, right? Okay, the board will recess and will reconvene at about 6:30. Okay, good evening. This is the October 24th, 2023 regular meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District School Board. Thank you all for being here. The board met in closed session and took no reportable action. Can I get an approval on the agenda order?
So moved.
Student preferential board vote. Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, great. Okay, since we have called the meeting to order, and I know many people in the room are here because of something that was on the agenda that is not currently on the agenda. So I just want to really briefly touch on that. I think a lot of you are signed up to speak during open forum, which is great. That's appropriate. We have a special board meeting scheduled for 8:30 on Friday morning to bring back the item that I pulled. And I just want to briefly touch on the thinking around that. Our last board meeting happened right after the Hamas terror attacks, and most of the people up here condemned the attacks and recognized that many in our community were really suffering, and to let us know how we could support you. But we weren't able to pass a resolution because that board agenda had already been published, and we've learned a lot about this over the past couple of days, had already been published by that time, so we couldn't do it. So I worked, Shauna and I worked, Ms. Siegel and I worked with a lot of folks in the community over the next 2 weeks to put together a resolution that seemed to at least partially convey the trauma and the fear that a lot of people are feeling. And last Friday, it was added to the agenda. And immediately we heard from many community members that had concerns that it had been, this addressed the concerns of a lot of the community members, and that there were some other community members, due to the fallout of that I had failed to acknowledge, that I truly hadn't engaged in conversation with, that quite frankly I hadn't really considered. And that was a fail on my part. So given that in the item, I think many people don't know this, and I think I haven't communicated this very well. We have a 2-meeting rule, which means any item has to come to us twice so that there is chance for the community to weigh in before we take a vote. So I had, when I added that item to the agenda for tonight, I had asked the board to waive the 2-meeting rule. That is not something we do lightly, and that is something that we only do if we think that there is no controversy or there are no concerns from the community or that everyone has been heard. And so it became very clear that when we got several communications about a community that did not feel like they had been heard, that I guessed, I was not allowed to talk to them because we are not allowed to discuss, except for when we're right up here publicly, that the board would really hesitate to waive the 2-meeting rule, and we would not in fact be passing the resolution tonight. So both having not engaged with some members of our community, which was a mistake on my part, and knowing that it was very important to this group that we waive the 2-meeting rule and pass the resolution, I made a judgment, and I reached out to Ms. Siegel and told her, and she agreed that it was the right decision at the time to pull it, so that we could outreach to other community members that we hadn't, and we could satisfy the board that hopefully they would be willing to waive the 2-meeting rule and go ahead and vote on the item so that we could just pass it. So I truly believe that if we had kept it on this forum tonight, we wouldn't have waived the 2-meeting rule. We would have discussed it, but not passed it. And it would have been put on the calendar for November 14th to pass. Instead, we have bumped it. And I think that we have answered all the community concerns. And hopefully many of you can come on Friday morning, where I am cautiously optimistic that my colleagues will waive the 2-meeting rule and approve the resolution on the spot. And so weeks in advance, we will actually get it approved rather than where we would have. But I am sorry for not explaining it well, and I am sorry for forgetting that not everyone knows all of the board inside baseball about 2-meeting rules and about notifications and about what we can do and who we can't talk to. So that's just to share where I was, and I hope that our resolutions are passed on Friday morning as quickly as possible, because I know that our communities are in crisis and need to hear from us that we support them and that we condemn all forms of hate, and that we're going to do this work as a whole district. Ms. Siegel, I think you had something you want to add?
I just wanted to give a little bit of the background and context too. Very shortly after the events of October 7, I was honored to be invited to work with Board President DiBrienza, along with members of the Jewish community, to begin discussing the drafting of a resolution condemning Hamas's act of terrorism and anti-Semitism, and to express support for the Jewish community and students in Palo Alto who were devastated and frightened by the attacks in which innocent people, including women, children, and babies, were targeted and then killed and abducted. Yes, I'm just giving, but how it started is this happened, and we needed to address it right away. There was also the city council meeting, and at this city council meeting on October 16th, I attended remotely. We were further traumatized by the hate speech and invectives directed at me, at Jews. This abhorrent situation further demonstrated the need to draft a resolution and why we were doing so quickly. There was a need. And just this past Thursday, a swastika was found outside of Starbucks on El Camino. There is a need. We did this quickly. There is a widespread humanitarian crisis in Gaza that has become even more acute, and we mourn the devastating loss of innocent lives in Gaza, including innocent children, as well as the appalling conditions there. So given the circumstances, we felt it was important for the board to draft a resolution denouncing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, bigotry, hatred, and intolerance while expressing support for our Jewish students. Many were afraid to send their kids to school, and many families did not send their kids to school. And although our intent was to help, it became clear when the resolution was posted online in our board packet that the impact was hurt for many in a community who did not feel seen or heard, and who were also expressing suffering and experiencing fear for their own safety. Transparency and inclusivity are key in that spirit, and to address the well-founded fear of some of our community members. While I supported the posted draft of the resolution, I understood the reasoning behind the very temporary delay of the issue, which I supported with the expectation that it will be addressed at a special meeting of the board this Friday. And I want to acknowledge it will be addressed at a special meeting of the board this Friday. We as a board and a district must be clear in expressing our commitment that each and every student needs and deserves to feel safe, respected, and free from identity-based hatred in our schools and in our community. One of our objectives is to foster a cohesive community whose mutual intention is the safety, well-being, and security of every single student. We want our students to feel seen, heard, and respected. And I am hopeful that the outcome of the board meeting on Friday will bring us closer together. Well, my point is why we waited. Yes, but I need to explain. Oh, okay. But we pulled it from the agenda. And so I need to clear, it's not on the agenda, but it is important for the community to hear why it was done with haste and why waiting till Friday will hopefully bring us closer together in our condemnation of terrorism and hate, and our resolute commitment to embrace compassion and unity. That is what I wanted to say so the community has some background and understands the haste with which we did it and why we are now having a special meeting. I needed to acknowledge that as a human.
Our understanding is the live stream maybe is not working right now. I know that we don't have Mr. Moore here tonight. So if someone could just be aware of that and try to figure that out. I don't know which camera it's coming from. Okay, we are going to move on with our reports and then open forum. And I'll probably note it again right before open forum, but I just want to note it is a very full room. There are a lot of very strong emotions in the room. That is great. We're here for it. But I ask you, in order to make it as safe a place as possible for people to speak, if we can hold off on cheering, booing, making noises, just let people speak and leave space for them to speak, because for many people, it's really scary to get up there. So it would be wonderful if we could respect that. Okay, student board member reports. Who's going to go first? Okay.
Audio good, everyone? Good. Perfect. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Okay. I see a lot of you guys here, so I'll keep it brief so you guys can get home into whatever else you guys have. Real quick, starting with sports. Sports are starting to wind down as we close out the fall season. I know every sport has had a great season so far, and we're really proud of all the student athletes who've put hours upon hours into training, practice, and competing. So senior nights for all the fall sports are happening in the upcoming weeks, including cross-country senior night, which I believe was tonight with their meet against Gunn. I was sent the results packet a half hour ago, and frankly, I'm not smart enough to interpret all of those numbers. Someone who does track, please tell me what that actually means. But I did see a lot of Palo Alto runners high up there in the ranks, so I'm really proud of all of them, and congratulations to everyone who I'm sure put a lot of effort into it. Girls volleyball has also had an incredible run, finishing as the undefeated champion in league play. Congrats to everyone who participated in that. Cheer and dance also had events recently, with cheer hosting the Little Vikes and dance hosting Dancers Unite. Winter sports are also kicking off soon, with tryouts and informational meetings happening in the upcoming weeks. Moving on to some of the other activities around school, Pally Speech and Debate Team had their first league tournament with a total of 55 students competing and 6 students reaching the final round. Congratulations to all of them. Scioli is preparing for their first tournament coming up soon in early November. Pally Robotics also has a tournament coming up soon. And the Campanile, one of Pally's journalism issues, has published their second issue this morning. Tons of great editorials and articles by student journalists. It was a really great read when I read it. And onto visual and performing arts. Pally Choir had their Behind Bars fall concert, which focused on composers who had a bit of trouble following the rules, to put it lightly. I'm told it was a great performance, so good job to everyone participating in that. Last weekend, there was the Stanford Shopping Center. Our visual and performing arts program set up their art in unusual places at the shopping center. Orchestra, band, theater, basically every other art program as well, set up performances and pieces around the shopping center for passerbys to watch. And it was a great showcase of Pally's success, even in non-academic performance, even in non-academic aspects, which are often overshadowed in favor of the academics. In student life and student government, YCS Interact and Wellness work together to provide a lot of chai for the students. It tasted shockingly good, which is why I'm excusing some people calling it chai tea. For the record, that's like saying TT, don't say it. Thrift Fair collection has started. The actual thrift fair will happen on the 2nd of November. Until then, everyone's welcome to bring in their thrifted items for sale there. Seniors had a panoramic photo last Friday. There was a drone involved, which the senior leadership was really excited to tell me. Significantly less exciting for the seniors. This is the November 1st deadline for a lot of college apps, which seniors are now dealing with. My heart goes out to all of you guys who I'm sure are very stressed. Juniors had the digital PSAT a bit ago, which we thankfully had no tech issues during. And currently we're dreading when it's our turn to go through college apps. With that, I'll pass it over to Chris.
Thank you, Karthi. My report is basically the same as his, just replace all the Pallies with guns. So starting off with sports, we had a flurry of senior nights. So boys and girls water polo played Fremont on Thursday. The boys won 18-6 and the girls won 11-1. Girls volleyball senior night was against Los Gatos on last Thursday as well. They unfortunately lost 0-3. Like Carthy said, cross country senior night is today. Girls tennis is having their senior night on Thursday, and football is having their senior night on the 27th. Next week, Gun is also holding a few Halloween events. So the first is actually in partnership with Pali. YCS is holding a trunk or treat event on October 27th, where volunteers decorate their cars and families can then go see these decorations while trick-or-treating at Gun's parking lot. Next Monday, we'll be having a trick-or-treat event on Monday during lunch. Gun students will be able to go to different classrooms and get candy for answering different trivia questions. And then finally, on Tuesday, which is Halloween, Mr. Hall will be running his Halloween costume contest with prizes for staff and students. The performing arts have also had a very busy week. On Sunday, there was a choir concert. On Monday, there was a band concert. Today, there's a wind ensemble concert with JLS and Fletcher bands. Tomorrow, there's a jazz concert. And finally, there's an orchestra concert on Thursday. Our fall play, The Play That Goes Wrong, is opening this Friday with an opening gala. You can buy tickets on guntheater.org, and it'll run through the weekend and next week. So in short, if you're free this week, maybe stop by Gun during the evenings, and I'm sure there will be something going on. I always try to include something about equity in my reports. So our Student Equity Committee has been looking at cultural events, curriculum, working with middle schools, shared experiences among students and staff, and communication within subcommittees. This Thursday, they will actually be checking in as a whole committee and really just honing their goals for the rest of the year. Coming up, we also have a Dia de los Muertos event on November 1st. We'll be having a traditional altar at Gun to honor loved ones and Pan de Muerto for students. And then finally, just a few more miscellaneous things. Like the Campanile, the Oracle is also coming out this week. This is our third issue. We have a story about this meeting. We're featuring student pilots. We have fall snack recommendations so lots to look forward to, and our staffers are very busy at production. Our admin team has also been trying to increase student voice. Recently, they held a new thing called Titan Talks during lunch, where basically they were just in the library and open to students asking about a variety of topics that they were interested in, which went well. And then finally, we've finally been seeing some construction progress on Gun's campus. We've had this huge crane that you can see from everywhere, and I think everyone's glad to actually see some visible progress. Unfortunately, the building is set to open after I graduate, but it'll be really cool for the rest of Gun to finally have a food services building and for our admin team to get out of their current temporary situation. But that's all for my report.
Thank you. I really can't see the back row there, and I'm sure space is tight, but there are some piles of chairs in the corner if people want to take some of them out and sit, but it sounds like maybe, I mean, you all manage yourselves however you want, but there are some chairs back there, just so you know. Okay, just don't block the exits, of course. Okay, superintendent's report.
All right, I'll be brief. First of all, I'd like to just thank Vicki Lau, my assistant, and tonight I know a lot of people are here for the first time at a board meeting at the district office, speaking all of those things that are uncomfortable and not necessarily intuitive. So as always, Vicki, I appreciate you helping everybody and making sure that we get everyone in the right spot. So thank you for that. I was also at the Art in Unusual Places. That has become a tradition now for us. And it's just really one of the neat events that we do at the Stanford Mall, highlighting our visual and performing arts at the same time in such a team effort. It just really a fun, good energy for the entire community. Then finally, a newer tradition is to begin each meeting with just a short 1-minute clip from a student in the district talking about something that had value for them. And tonight's speaker is Julian Hung, who we have seen before, ASB president of Pali. So Sarah, let's have Julian get us into the meeting.
For me, I think staff members have made a really big impact on my life. I've been in PAUSD since kindergarten, and almost as much as my parents. I feel like PAUSD staff has really raised me because I spend so much time with them. So first of all, it's Mr. Gallagher, our student activities director. Without him, prom couldn't happen, homecoming wouldn't happen. He makes our school run, and I feel like that's an essential part. Another staff member that's really helped me grow and develop is Mr. Daniel Nguyen in the math department. Around a month ago, I decided to speak out during board open forum on a topic that I was in the minority about. I was feeling really nervous, and after I spoke, I saw an email in my inbox, and it was from Mr. Nguyen, congratulating me for speaking up, and that made a real difference for me that night, and it really helped me go to sleep easier. I'd also like to highlight all our athletic coaches and trainers. They all do a lot, and they sacrifice their time and energy to make sure we're well developed as people, as well as athletes. And then in addition, I really want to thank district staff. I really feel like the district does a lot to connect with the community and do really valuable work.
That's it for you? They really do. They're a good way to start every meeting. I like it. Thank you. Okay, it is time for open forum. We have many people signed up. As a reminder, you have 1 minute. You'll be asked to come to the microphone. Speak really close to the microphone because there are people watching at home, and we can usually hear you in the room even if you're not right at the mic, but people at home cannot. So please step right up to the mic. I recognize most of the faces in this room and have the idea that there are 2 general topics that we're going to talk about. Just to the students, I want to remind you that if it has anything to do with the item itself, please only talk to it at the item. I don't like to cut students off. I don't want to. So please only talk during open forum if it's not directly about the math item we're going to talk about later. We always call students first for those of you that are new to this process. So open forum students, starting with Fenton Serlingo, and then Ezra Furtado Tuari, and Benjamin Vakil.
Hi, so I was under the impression that all the multivariable calc, anything relating to that was going to be during open forum. That's going to happen later though?
It's a very good question. I think that the intention was also to have it there, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure really where it fits.
I'm just trying to decide whether to deliver my speech now.
Yeah, go ahead, do it now.
Okay,
Let's do it
I'll
now.
be quick since I've only
Sure.
got
Oh, could you start
30
his timer again?
Okay.
Start the timer again. Thanks.
Okay. PAUSD's open forum provides an opportunity for the public, especially students, to voice their opinions and concerns in a way the board can hear. I respect the motives of my fellow peers who are speaking in favor of a math course. However, their quantity of speakers takes away already minimal time and attention from other members of the public who may have other pressing issues. I suggest that the board resolve the issue of multivariable calculus in the near future to allow other individuals and smaller groups to have their voices heard as well, and also to give this group of students a clear yes or no answer to their action. Thank you.
Thank you. Ezra Furtado Tuari, Benjamin Vakil, Andrew Zhu.
I'm here with many other students, as was previously mentioned, today to continue the conversation surrounding math education at PAUSD. We realize that math is on the agenda tonight and are aware that comments pertaining to agenda items are not allowed during open forum. However, what we have to say does not all fall under the agenda item, which only covers PAUSD's Reimagining Middle School Mathematics Plan. Math issues are very important to a large group of students, only a portion of which are here right now. For instance, there are students who could not be here tonight as there's a band concert happening right now at Gunn. Other students who could not join us were completing college applications and studying for tests. We will address the need for more accessible communication. However, so far, showing up in large numbers has been the only way we can demonstrate that we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could... So again, it's just a request. If we can hold our applause or any other reactions till the very end of open forum, it just tends to make it easier for people to come up, and it saves us some time. We have a lot of speakers. Benjamin, Andrew, and then Gautam Pilapakam.
As many of you know, an open letter detailing the problems with PAUSD math has been circulating around our campuses this month. It has been signed by 290 current PAUSD students. We have made it clear time and again that we are not some small minority of students. As we outline in this letter, the systematic problems present in the attitude displayed by district actions towards our math students can only be overcome by facilitating and valuing student voice and decision-making process. You can view it at tinyurl.com/PAUSD math letter. I also have hard copies for anyone who wants them. Thank you.
Thanks. If you could also email it to us, because I've been asked about it and I haven't seen it yet. So Andrew, Gautam, and then Brandon Ye.
After our combined speech at the August 22nd board meeting, the district directed staff and admins at both Gunn and Pally to hold a lunchtime forum that was meant to gather student opinions around the topic of multivariable calculus. These forums happened in mid-September. Students were initially excited to share their perspectives, but found quickly that the forum did not serve as a satisfactory outlet for student voice. Rather, it was simply meant to explain to us that PAUSD have various math electives for students who are finished with BC calculus, and that we could go outside the district for college-level courses for multivariable calculus, differential equations, and linear algebra. Students were then asked to write down questions and comments on Post-it notes, which were then collected. The admin's rationale for this was to get more students to participate in the discussion, and we agree that this was sensible. Nevertheless, the overwhelming majority of students there expressed their interest and in support of multivariable calculus in PAUSD.
That was very well timed. Thank you. Gautam, and please tell me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong when you come up here. Then Brandon Ye, and then Timothy Yang.
Okay. We believe that.
Can you tell me how to say your name? I want to make sure you get it right.
Oh, yeah, sure. Gotham.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh. Okay. We believe that continued student input through an objective-oriented committee would help to ensure transparency of decision-making, as well as to involve student input in the policy-making process. At the moment, all decisions about math education are made by a committee that has no students or community members on it. We believe in involving voices for the community and taking in their opinions. As a result, we believe that creating a platform for students to voice their opinions is necessary, and we appreciate the creation of monthly Titan Talks at Gunn, but we believe that there should also be a way for students to ensure that they have a say in the creation and administration of policies that affect them.
Thank you. Brandon, then Timothy, and then Chano. Kim, you all might know what order you're in. I don't know if this was, it sounds like this might have been very strategic, so.
While we understand that most placement decisions happen through mass steering, which does not have a board member on it and thus not subject to the Brown Act, we believe that this decisions should still be made transparently. The committee is responsible for many important policy changes, such as the introduction of MVC, acceleration, and placement. Thus, we hope that agendas and notes from the steering committee meetings will be made available to the public. This would ensure that the opinions of math teachers, administrators, and ILs are made clear, which allows students to better understand the rationale behind current policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Timothy, then Chano, and then Joshua Brest.
As mentioned in previous meetings, in a statement representing the PAUSD secondary counseling community, Gun Counselor Mr. Leftwich drew a direct link between the debates over multivariable calculus and the college admissions process. He directly insinuated that some parents were pressuring their students academically to be accepted into elite colleges. Mr. Leftwich contested the efficacy of such tactics for college admissions, arguing that colleges prioritize qualities such as authentic explorations of interests, positive and genuine and higher-level studies, accusing the supposed 30-some odd students for whom this debate is relevant. Mr. Leftwich argued that they were not arguing for all students and were diverting resources and energies that should be directed towards the outcome for all students.
Thank you. Chano, Joshua, and then Albert Lee. And please correct me if I pronounced your name wrong.
It's pronounced Chanu, but that's okay, I guess.
No, it's not
Okay, so we firmly believe counselors act with students' interests in mind. However, the trend of teachers and administrators stereotyping students as college-obsessed and pushed by their parents is harmful. Leftwich himself stated that offering the option for students to take MVC only has value in simplistic tactics pushed by overbearing parents, leading to students feeling shame and inadequacy. What message does this send to students? Does it promote an atmosphere of care? No, it promotes an atmosphere of mistrust in which students who enjoy math are devalued by the system that should support them. Weaving such mistrust into the fabric of counseling culture is no doubt deleterious. The position of power that teachers, administrators, and counselors hold in comparison to students only magnifies the damage that such stereotypes create. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua, Albert, and then Sid Kola.
We are aware that some students can feel upset and inadequate as a result of their peers skipping courses. These feelings of inadequacy are not a light matter to us. However, one student's feeling of inadequacy do not constitute a strong reason to hold another student back. When a freshman takes Analysis H, they do so for their own enrichment. The feelings of inadequacy that come from other students are side effects and need to be resolved separately, and are indicative of a larger mental health problem. Mental health issues are absolutely critical and should be considered with far more nuance than a band-aid solution of obstructing skipping. In fact, I've been using the service TBH provided through the school, which so far has greatly improved my mental well-being in ways I never thought possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert, Sid, and then Albert, you.
Some maintain the idea that what MVLA is doing is legal according to state laws and guidelines. But as of right now, we have not seen any specific evidence of illegality on their part. On the contrary, the representatives from the CDE confirmed that their modality would be legal under a CCAP agreement, and MVLA chose to expand their program this year. If PAUSD continues to refuse to look further into offering MVC in a similar way to MVLA, we hope to see a clear reason to why this is not a possibility. In the interest of transparency, we should be able to independently verify the legality of such a modality if we choose to do so. Another concern was that MVC as a class would not fit into a CCAP agreement, which we found to be unsubstantiated.
Sid, Albert, and then Tom, I have half of I don't know. Tom Shea? It's not Shy? There's a question mark at the end, so. So you're Sid?
Yeah. As per the written memorandum of understanding for CAP between PAUSD and Foothill, inclusion of the course would not require any amendment to the agreement. PAUSD already has CCAP classes like this, namely beginning journalism and advanced authentic research. Providing these classes is good for students' educational opportunities. However, by offering these classes but refusing to work with Foothill to offer MVC, PAUSD has been quite hypercritical. Beginning journalism and AAR have the same exact utility with regards to career and technical education as MVC. These other classes also lack representation of historically underrepresented groups as corroborated by data obtained through a public records access request. Nevertheless, PAUSD has no qualms about offering them as CCAP courses. A CCAP MVC course should be treated similarly. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert, Tom, and then Jason Lin.
Although not all schools in the Bay Area offer multivariable calculus on campus during the school day, a number of public school districts do, including but not limited to the Mountain View Los Altos Union High School District, the Pleasanton Unified School District, the San Mateo Union High School District, the Sequoia Union High School District, the Fremont Unified High School District, the New Haven Unified School District, and the San Jose Unified School District, setting a positive precedent for PAUSD to follow. Concerns about how adding multivariable calculus would affect student choices could be addressed using data from these schools or by consulting with school administrators from these districts. We would also like to note that because so many schools offer the class successfully, there likely will not be major ramifications for PAUSD.
Thank you. Tom, Jason, Nathan Shee.
Students taking MBC may be a significant portion of those, but students taking any college courses from our local community colleges to be given credit. Many high schools around the country do this, and so did PAUSD up until this year. There is some concern about having outside courses on our transcript, as it could misrepresent students' high school experience or artificially boost GPA. While I agree with this insofar as not including online courses from accredited institutions such as UC Scout or LanguageBird, although 10-15 LanguageBird courses are allowed to be included for credit on the PAUSD transcript for students from either high school, we believe that including courses taken at Foothill or De Anza do not include these concerns, as they have been proven to be appropriately rigorous classes. Unfortunately, instead of taking these concerns into account, we have found that the district is moving to exclude these types of courses from the transcript.
Thank you. Jason, Nathan Satuk, Savramar.
Claims that colleges will view community college transcripts and weigh them into the admissions process appear not to be well corroborated. When applying to colleges, students must send their transcripts through parchment individually through each college and are not given the opportunity to report these classes through self-reported coursework, as these courses must go in the additional information section in the application. This already shows that they are not given the exact same treatment as courses placed on the high school transcript. Perhaps colleges may still consider these courses when a student applies to college, but students would only be able to ensure that their classes are considered for credit if they are placed on the high school transcript. Thus, in the interest of students, the board should consider giving credit on the transcripts for community college courses.
Thank you. Nathan Satuk, Ishan Joshi.
This issue goes beyond multivariable calculus, beyond skip tests, beyond math in general. At the root of this issue is the district's unwillingness to listen to its students, and its presumption that, in fact, of reasonable evidence, it knows what's better for the students than the students themselves. As we have repeatedly demonstrated, we have tried to speak out many times, many times. Dr. Austin yet has claimed that, quote, engaging with students, it is a trap. And other voices on the board have held similar claims. They have repeatedly ignored our statements about being uninfluenced by parents and have stereotyped us as college chasers, when in reality, we are fueled by the simple desire to learn more about the wonderful field of math. Why must my individuality be taken away? Thank you.
Thank you. Satuk, Ishan, Benjamin Yang.
In addition, the district's tactics are dishonest and duplicitous. They have misrepresented data to further their claims, like Don Austin releasing a statement that, according to a survey, more than 65%, 161 students, of those who challenged a math course by examination were successful, despite the fact that at least 139 of the 161 students could not have challenged their course based on their math class. In addition, in the same survey, 42% of respondents indicated that they were either somewhat likely or extremely likely to take a class beyond AP Calculus BC in high school if they could, and yet they ignored the data to paint multivariable calculus as a low-demand course. Regardless of opinions, math policies and any kind of policy in general should be determined with objectivity and transparency, and misrepresenting data is a violation of both these principles.
Thank you. Ishan, Benjamin, and then Claudia.
This issue is important to all students, not just nerd or math kids. At the core of this issue is student voice, the idea that students should have a say in how the district runs. We are the most directly affected by the policies of the district. And the lack of choice is not limited to math. For instance, PAUSD refuses to offer AP Government because of a negative attitude by the history towards offering the course. Like with math, this is because the student body is consistently underestimated in their abilities and interests. For any course offered, there will be students in it who are failing. The fear of having to implement strong support structures for those students should not be an excuse for not offering the course. That helps no one. We believe that if there is sufficient student support for a course, the district should try to accommodate the students who wish to sign up for it, even if it means having difficult conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin, Claudia, Ethan Liu.
We feel disrespected, neglected, and left alone by the district. The foundation of a successful school district is the mutually beneficial relationship between the students and staff, and that cannot exist if the staff ignore and dismiss the students. To us, the disregarded math lovers, it is like shouting into a void with no expectations of a response, and it is maddening knowing that we are beholden to the arbitrary whims of a government we do not have a say in. We, without a single iota of parental pressure, have spoken up. We have shown the district that we are unhappy with their current course. We are willing to work with the district right now to reach a common ground, but they have not yet responded. Only with a change in the mindset towards cooperation can our bond fully mend. When will the district make that choice? Also, we have one further comment.
Claudia, then Ethan, and then Anna Golu.
I'm in the honors lane for math, as math has always been my favorite subject, and I've always been good at it. And I'm here to talk about multivariable calculus, but I'm not part of that group that just spoke. I think the school should not put limited resources into even more challenging math classes when there are students struggling to meet grade level math standards. PAUSD already has a significantly accelerated math pathway with 4 years of math education taught in 3 years at the middle schools. Offering a class that is not accessible to students, even in the highest math lane, contradicts our principles of inclusivity and would contribute to the toxic competitiveness we already face at school every day. This whole discussion over multivariable calculus is also taking away important time from discussing other more pressing issues. Ultimately, I think that the district should prioritize putting resources towards student mental health and promoting equity and equality and a supportive learning environment.
Thank you, Ethan, and then Anna, and then that will be the end of our students, and I'll move on to the adults in the room. Is Ethan here?
At the end of the meeting, At the end of the meeting, staff promised that they would read each statement carefully and compile a frequently asked questions document, which would be sent out to students shortly after. However, students have still received no communication from staff and administrators regarding the forum after over a month. Furthermore, a public records access request of all emails regarding the forum showed little evidence of staff communication or any attempt to even create an FAQ. Additionally, the Oracle stated that they would not be interested in having similar meetings in the future. Students have no way of making sure their opinions are taken into account. When students express concern about not being heard, they are often criticized for conflating being heard with reaching a solution that benefits them. As a result, these students are discouraged from continuing to advocate for transparency without any change in district behavior.
Thank you. Last student speaker is Anna. And then I'll just check in to see if there's any student that thinks they put in an open forum card, but I didn't call on them. So I'll do that in a minute.
In light of recent events, I, as a Middle Eastern student here in Palo Alto, believe it is critical that we address the unfolding situations in the Israel and Palestine regions openly. Rather than allow global events to spread to our academic environment negatively, please consider the power of personal connections and compassion to prevent further harm. Both Israelis and Palestinians are experiencing immense pain and loss. We share the collective human experience of grief, and it is essential that we choose a path of empathy and mutual support instead of division. Together we can uplift one another in times of adversity rather than cause harm through animosity. Let us strive to foster an atmosphere to open communication and respect, where all students, regardless of their backgrounds, can freely express their thoughts without fear of censorship or discrimination. We must recognize that our actions can have far-reaching consequences, not only for our immediate community, but for all students who deserve a safe and inclusive learning environment. PAUSD is a community filled with creative individuals who deserve to express themselves. So let us express ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the last student. You can all clap. As a reminder, we cannot comment on non-agendized items on open forums, so we will let everyone speak, but that is it. There's 2 students. Yeah. Okay, have they put in a card? Yeah. Okay, give me names of 2 students.
Annabelle Honigstein and Ari Cohen.
Annabelle Honigstein and Ari Cohen. Let's see. You see, where is it just not checked that it's a student? Annabelle, I see it. Okay, I'll check it. And Ori Cohen, I see it. Okay, so first on my list is Ori, and then Annabelle. We can applaud again after that. Pull the microphone up so we can hear you. Thanks.
On the morning of October 13th, my classmates rushed to school. Aside from a quick glance at the headlines for the day, they were largely unaffected by the global crisis. I wish I could say the same. I spent the morning trying to get a glimpse of my older brother, a Pali graduate, for just a moment on FaceTime before he had to go back to serving my country. That conversation would be my only glimmer of hope on that day, a day that marked global terror organizations as a day for my death, the death of my family and of my friends. On that day, I faced both the immense anxiety of what would happen in this nightmare, as well as the disappointment with the lack of response from my school. On a day when I did not feel safe to go to school, I was forced to sit and watch as my administration, the people responsible for educating me in a safe environment, completely neglected my community and failed to condemn a terror attack in fear of pushback. I'm absolutely heartbroken by the board's decision to remove the resolution. We stand and implore you to listen to reason and to stand with humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more. Annabelle?
Two years ago, my family and I were eating dinner in Tel Aviv when a terrorist shot and killed 3 people in the bar adjacent to the restaurant. I will never forget fearing for my life in that moment. I came back home utterly terrified and completely traumatized, and now, 2 years later, I'm terrified once again. I'm utterly disappointed by the lack of support I'm receiving from my community, my school, and the district. All I see are vague messages, confused teachers, and an overwhelming amount of anti-Semitism on social media. How are Jewish students like me supposed to go to school knowing that our school refuses to condemn anti-Semitism? The hatred of Jews is not political. If our president and governor can do it, so can you. This is about your students' safety and your failure to provide it by clearly condemning terror and hate against a minority in your district. Thank you.
Is now that all the students? Great. Okay, we'll go to the top of the list then. Again, let's hold our applause in between. Lori Myers, David Asher, Jason Henry.
We're Lori Myers and David Asher. We're standing up here together. This is my father. I'm Lori Myers, alum parent, teacher, assistant principal. You and I, we do the work that we do because we believe in doing all we can do for kids. I know we agree how important it is to be an upstander and to lead by example. So you and I know that it's time like these for leaders, each one of you, to act on the anti-Semitism that's right here in Palo Alto. Already, since October 7th, national anti-Semitism is up 400%. This makes this issue not global, but local. When Hamas, an org dedicated to killing Jews, and I'll send you the link, actually massacres Jews, that means they'd massacre me, our Jewish students. That makes this not global, it's local. When Hamas calls a global day of rage against Jews and our Jewish children are afraid to go to school, that's not global, that's local. When we find a swastika 5 blocks from here on the bike route to Escondido, that makes this not global, it's local.
Time is
It's
up.
not
Thank
about
you.
taking sides, it's about doing our jobs as leaders.
Thank
On
you,
Friday,
Lori.
please act urgently to pass the original,
Thank you, Lori.
unaltered resolution
I've got to keep it to 1 minute each
defining
person.
and condemning anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you. Taking both minutes? Okay, we've got, yeah. So you can, each person can have a minute. You can't cede your time to someone else. So she could pass the microphone and let the person next to her, who's next in line, finish. But I have to keep everyone to 1 minute, as I did with the students. So does that mean Jason Henry is next? Because you two were up there, okay. Jason, Joe Levy, and Sebastian Detelli.
Thank you. I'm reading a statement from a Jewish student who's too scared to be here. Sorry. The last few weeks have been shocking to most everyone around the globe. Through the past weeks, terrorism has exhibited itself through videos of beheaded babies, murdered grandmothers, and kidnappings. Another shock has been the overwhelming support for those in and around the Israeli Jewish community. From written to digital messages, multi-religion vigils to marches of solidarity, the community has come together in unison, recognition and understanding of one thing: condemning terrorists is not a shocking political statement. And yet, another shock has rattled not only me, but the entirety of the Jewish community: the lack of recognition from our schools, the place we are expected to gain an education at. Not on the days following the first attacks, the Global Jihad Day, nor today do I feel safe at school because of this lack of recognition.
Thank you. Joe, Sebastian, and Jonathan Lavav.
This is also a student statement from a Jewish student in Palo Alto. On October 7th, we were faced with a heart-wrenching tragedy that left us with a heavy heart and countless questions. The massacre in Israel shook us all to our core, but it has also exposed a deep well of disappointment in the face of the district's decisions on the matter. Vague messaging that does not address our concerns or fears, as well as no calls to action at our schools. In the aftermath, we feel ourselves not feeling safe, a sense of insecurity amplified by the chaos on social media, the inability of our teachers to guide us through this ordeal. What adds to our sadness is the profound lack of support from administration and teachers. We look to educators for guidance and solace during moments of crisis, yet their silence is deafening. We as a community deserve better. This is not a political issue. It is a humanitarian one that demands your attention and compassion.
Thank you. Sebastian, Jonathan, and then Sarah Conforti.
I'm the father of 2 children of the Palo Alto School District. I'm here to urge you to immediately pass the original resolution condemning terrorism and anti-Semitism. The October 7th massacre was the worst genocidal violence against Jews since World War II. It was met here by some in Palo Alto with celebration and gloating. That is an immediate threat to Jewish children under your care. Last night, my 7-year-old asked me if she will be kidnapped too. It is your duty as educators to combat the hateful rhetoric and lies that justify and celebrate genocide. No more equivocation, no more false equivalence, no more catering to bigots. Act now.
Thank you. Jonathan, Sarah, Jeanette Hissling.
How's it work? I have to watch that?
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to watch it. I'll just tell you when a minute's up, but
Got
that's
it.
your definitely.
I wish I was taking multivariate calculus again with these guys. My name is Jonathan Lavav, and I'm a PAUSD parent. I'm here to urge the board to pass the resolution against anti-Semitism as it was originally proposed. What we witnessed on October 7th in Israel is an act of unprecedented evil in its scale and barbarism against the civilian Jewish population. While the events happen in Israel, the repercussions are being felt in our local community. School systems have the duty to inculcate moral clarity in children. Schools have a critical role in communicating social norms. What kind of behaviors are sanctioned? What speech is normative and what speech is non-normative? The resolution as originally drafted made a strong statement about these questions. Anti-Semitism is wrong, period, and so is Islamophobia. The particular words matter, however, and mixing the two dilutes the condemnation of either. Any additional delay in passing a condemnation against the massacre communicates to our children that what happened doesn't meet the threshold for urgency. The recent spike in anti-Semitism and harassment of Jews around the world, including in Palo Alto, traces its origins directly to the massacre on October 7th. Strong responses by our local institutions send a clear message that anti-Semitic acts do not conform to our community's norms and are not legitimate forms of expression.
Thank you. Sarah, Jeanette, and Maytal.
Good evening. True peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice. Martin Luther King. No one is immune to terror. Therefore, terror must be condemned by all. Our children will not be targets of Hamas terror group or any other forms of resistance. Condemning Hamas means supporting human rights. Condemning Hamas means supporting women's rights. Condemning Hamas means supporting LGBTQ rights and children's rights. Our Jewish and Israeli community has witnessed a disturbing 400% increase in anti-Semitism since October 7, with community members that have been directly affected. Appearance of hate symbols and swastikas, hate parades calling out for violence and Jewish genocide on the Stanford campus in Palo Alto. We are here today out of concern for the safety of our children. We ask the school board to stand strongly against any form of hate speech, anti-Semitism, racism, and Islamophobia. We must etch the words never again in stone and make it look clear what we stand for. Thank you.
Jeanette, Metal, and S. Whitaker.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Kiesling, and I must say I'm shocked that the board cited bureaucratic reasons for not saying the right thing at the right time and condemning the Hamas attack, the terrorist attack on Israel. As a German citizen whose people have been responsible for the worst atrocities against Jews, I urge you to take a clear stance against rampant anti-Semitism, indifference, and fear. Luckily, we're not living in Nazi Germany. So what reason do we have today to not stand with our Jewish friends and their relatives, among them, when their relatives, among them babies and young children, are being slaughtered, raped, and abducted? You cannot stay silent in the face of this horror. Your obligation is to show our children that this is a time to stand firm with their Jewish friends and fellow students, and not a time, if there ever was one, for hatred, indifference, and fear.
Thank you. Metal, initial S. Again, it's going to go faster if we save the applause to the end. Metal, initial S, and Abra Siegel.
On October 7th, Jews watched in horror as Israel, the one and only Jewish homeland, fell under attack, shattering our sense of safety in the world. Most Jews have a personal connection to Israel and are devastated by what's happening. My personal connection is to a community in the south of Israel where I lived with a host family. On October 7th, Hamas broke into this community and murdered everyone in sight. They ran around shouting, "God is great, kill the Jews," while shooting machine guns, slitting throats, burning people alive, raping women until their legs broke. My host father was found dead in a ditch 8 days later. As a Jewish educator in Palo Alto, I work with many students in this district. Our children and our teens are terrified, not only for Jews in Israel, but for themselves, Jews in Palo Alto. Instead of expressing compassion, their closest friends are sharing posts that aim to justify these horrific crimes against humanity. Please ensure the safety of our Jewish students by condemning anti-Semitism and passing this resolution.
Thank you. Initial S, Abra, and then Jaffe Lipson.
I'm here on behalf of a Pali student who does not feel safe and comfortable to come herself. I'm a student at Pali. In the last few weeks, I've been working with ASB and Pali JSU to spread awareness with what's going on. However, I have felt frustrated and am at a loss as to what I can do to the lack of response and support from the Pali administration. Even though I myself am not Israeli or Palestinian, I recognize that the anti-Semitism upheld by Hamas and Hamas supporters is not just affecting innocent Israeli civilians, but also Jewish communities worldwide. I have friends who have been affected by the situation, and I find it astonishing that students are crying on school campus, but the school has said almost nothing. All the students deserve to feel supported and protected, regardless of their ethnic background or religion. This is not political. We as students promote the well-being of our peers, condemn anti-Semitism, and want to take action.
I need you to stop.
Do you?
Thank you. Abra, Jaffe, Salwa.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of a student who doesn't feel comfortable being here.
The last few weeks have been very difficult for me, going through the motions of school after Hamas terrorists massacred and mutilated 1,400 Jews in Israel on October 7th. This has shaken our entire world. And at Pali, all I've heard is silence from my classmates, from my teachers, from my coaches, and from the administration. Last week I started crying in Spanish class. Had to leave and go to the wellness center because I was so upset by the indifference, the lack of support shown to Jewish and Israeli students. When I tried to organize school events to raise awareness, mourn the loss of life, I was met with pushback, excuses, and obstacles from teachers and administrative staff. I couldn't organize a blue and white day, too political. I couldn't expect a mandatory assembly to condemn anti-Semitism after this single most horrific day for Jews since the Holocaust. This also needs lots of approvals from administration. And the days have continued to drag on.
Thank you. Jaffe, Sawa, Ifra, Ahmed. Am I saying it right? J-A-F-E? Oh, Jaffe, okay.
I'm presenting a statement on behalf of a student who's been cyberbullied and does not feel comfortable being here. In the past few weeks, it's been extremely hard to voice the way I feel, especially as a Middle Eastern student, about the conflict without getting attacked. Although I've been educated on this topic and voicing my opinions for a while, I still had concerns related to receiving backlash and hate from my peers. For a while, I stayed silent, but eventually I began speaking out due to the harmful misinformation and racist media that my peers were sharing on their Instagram feeds. I pointed out a harmful racist post that was spreading misinformation on a student's social media page. Soon after, pictures of myself from my social media account were screenshotted and posted on the student's private story, and I was attacked and shamed for my own physical appearance. I did not expect to be completely cyberbullied by people I considered my acquaintances. I never attacked this person's looks.
Time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sawa, Afra, and then Renee Rashid.
Hi, I'm also reading on behalf of a student, a Muslim student who is too afraid to speak up. As an Iranian American, I feel like my classmates just assume that I have certain beliefs and often hold a cold shoulder to me for the past few weeks. I do not support Hamas or terrorism, yet students have been attacking me simply because I look Middle Eastern. I am not Arab American, nor does that title represent me or represent anything that is bad. Given this, using the term MENA is essential to properly represent the other students who have been facing discrimination but do not identify as Arab. Not all individuals in MENA are Arab, and overgeneralizing erases the non-Arab voices from that region. All MENA individuals face similar discrimination and struggles. Using the phrase MENA is crucial to ensuring proper representation for all students who face anti-MENA hate and Islamophobia. Thank you.
Thank you. Afra, Renee, and then Ali Kaki.
Hi, I'm also reading a statement by a PAUSD student who wanted to remain anonymous for fear of repercussion. I want to start off by saying that I stand against anti-Semitism and do not condone any form of Jewish hate. I believe that the district should take appropriate action to make sure that the Jewish population feels safe and heard. However, I feel that the MENA and Muslim students' voices have become lost in the conversation. Due to such a small population of MENA students in PAUSD, over the past few weeks, I have never felt more judged and hated for simply existing. I've seen my peers post flat-out offensive and racist content on social media, and my community does not feel safe in our schools. MENA individuals in PAUSD had no hand in the recent terrorist attacks and do not deserve to feel unsafe in school. Both Jewish and MENA students alike deserve to feel safe and respected at school.
Thank you. Renee, Ali, Itai, Dada. Ali? Yes.
You know, I was 16 years old and a junior in high school during 9/11 in a school district in suburban America, not too dissimilar to PAUSD. I remember passing my teacher in the hallway as they shared with a colleague they can't wait until they bomb the F out of these people. I remember being asked as one of the few Muslim students at my school to speak about Islam. I remember being harassed and called slurs in chat groups and online long before Zoom bombing was a thing. Despite these memories, I had never felt this alone as I have felt recently here in California. And now, as a father of 2 PAUSD students, I humbly request that the PAUSD board focuses on our children at this time. I appreciate the grief and pain among many members of our local community. And I think if the district feels compelled to pass resolutions about this, we have to recognize all students. And I request resolutions be passed be a unity resolution. As an employee of Stanford Medicine now, earlier today we received updated communication from our leadership, and I've been very impressed with their resolve in how they communicated things, and I'd be happy to share their letters with you.
Thank you. Itai, Ahmed, Faria, Hilali.
This is a student statement. I grew up in Israel. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. Every day on Instagram, I see classmates spreading pro-Hamas propaganda and sharing misleading narratives. Even teachers have misleadingly portrayed events referring to Hamas as militants instead of terrorists when talking about the inhumane attacks of October 7th. Are they so unaware of the harm they inflict upon Jews here in the US? People I once considered friends now blame the Israelis for the devastating Hamas terrorist attacks. This is like blaming Jews for the Holocaust. PAUSD ignores the gravity of the situation and fails to address the rampant anti-Semitism affecting their students. Since Dr. Austin's disappointing stance on the International Day of Jihad, I felt increasingly unsafe attending school. My sleep and academic performance have suffered. Does PAUSD care? PAUSD raised me to voice my beliefs, yet now when I need to be heard the most, I feel silenced. The board's decision to remove the resolution leaves me heartbroken and speechless.
Thank you. Ahmed, Faria, and right, just going past the students. Scott Anderson.
Hi, I'm reading this on behalf of a student from Pali who feels very scared to say this herself. During this time, I've never felt as silenced, unseen, or threatened as I do now. It feels like I'm constantly walking on eggshells for simply existing with the ethnicity I was assigned at birth. I'm attacked online and in person for simply acknowledging the terror in my family's homeland. I have no idea whether my family and friends in Gaza are dead under hundreds of pounds of rubble, and I'm not going to know for a very long time due to the lack of contact as Gaza has no electricity. This shouldn't be a time where we extend the hatred. The district must support both Jewish and Middle Eastern North African students as we are all suffering from these tragic events. We must all be heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we skipped Ahmed, yes? Okay.
So my faith requires me to uphold the human rights of everyone equally. So I'm here to condemn the Hamas terrorist attacks against innocent Israeli children and civilians. And I also condemn the killing of innocent Palestinian children and other civilians in Gaza. I love the school district's The Promise, and in particular, its focus on inclusion. But in this moment, will we live up to the promise? Right now, my Jewish neighbors are experiencing anti-Semitism. And I'm here to speak for those of us who feel invisible. My Muslim neighbors are experiencing Islamophobia. And my Middle Eastern and North African neighbors are targets of hate. We are scared. Our children are scared. We're here asking for equality, for inclusion, for belonging. I urge you to pass a single community resolution to protect all of the marginalized in the district, one that's balanced and fair to everyone. I ask you to fulfill the promise.
Thank you. Scott, Edith Cohen, Sarah Woodham.
Hello, my name is Scott Anderson. I am a parent at Barron Park Elementary. I got
fourth grader and a 13-year-old that's at Fletcher. I've been in Barron Park for 10 years, speaking in support of dual strands at Barron Park. We got a very diverse class there. Parents are all in from PTA. We got a really strong PTA there. We're doing tons of events, tons of activity, and we're appreciative of the district support in Barron Park. We got an extra staff member because we had some really crowded classrooms. I mean, there's like 25 students, dual, second grade, third grade, all mixed up, a lot of folks. And so when we had the support and the outreach from the district, it was really appreciated. We really are all in at Barron Park, and we see the dual teachers teaming up together and working together to make some really good programs. We see these in the grants that are taking place, and we're all in for dual strand. Thank you.
That was a wait right there. Edith Cohen, Sarah Woodham.
Okay, I'll go off script, I guess. This is no time for silence with the horrible events of October 7. I'm calling on you to pass the resolution as proposed, calling out against anti-Semitism. You need to pass also another resolution against Islamophobia. So I also want to say, I'm a Middle Easterner, ethnically. My kids identify as MENA, as Jews, and also as East Asians, which they are. My parents were nearly murdered when they grew as children in Baghdad by a Muslim mob, but their families were saved by good Muslim neighbors.
Thank you.
The attackers in the Hamas also targeted Israeli Muslims, not only Israeli Jews.
Thank you. Sarah Woodham.
Hi, it's Sarah. I'm actually reading for someone who couldn't be here tonight. I'm an American Muslim parent of a student in the district. I grew up in the US, facing lots of racism and discrimination throughout my life. We chose Palo Alto to raise our kids because it seemed like an accepting place for people of all backgrounds, ethnicities, and religions. Even after living through 9/11 and the election of Trump, I have never felt like I am not seen as equally human until now. Our children have a real fear that their lives are not as valuable as other lives. Our Muslim and Arab students are experiencing bullying and harassment and are afraid to speak up about it, afraid to go to school. They are in pain. My ask from the board is that any resolution that is passed condemn hate in all its forms and serve to unify our community with a shared culture of empathy and support for all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that is the end of open forum. Does anybody think that they submitted a card and I did not call them? Okay, thank you very much to everyone. We are moving on. Completely lost track of what's next. Okay. Let's say, wait. Okay, well, we'll take a 5-minute break. People can clear out, do what they need to do. We'll come back in at 7:53. Can you all hear me? We're about to get started again. So if you are not here for the rest of the meeting, please take your conversations out to the parking lot. If you are here for the rest of the meeting, great. Have a seat, and we are going to get started again.
I think so. I'm not totally, I mean, like, don't, like, bring out, like, a gourmet meal. If you need to snack a little bit, I think that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. We are going to get started again. So I would appreciate, so that the board can continue with their business, that conversations that are in the room cease, because we've got an agenda to get through. We are going to start with staff reports. I'm going to ask again that conversations in the room cease so we can move on to our Fletcher Middle School Sustainability for All Choice Program implementation update. So please, if those conversations can go outside or just quiet down in the room so we can continue with our business. Thank you so much. I knew if I kept talking, eventually people would stop. Okay, so staff reports for A. Dr. Austin, can you get us started, please?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank our staff that is here tonight for our next two reports. Appreciate them being here to share some what we think is pretty good news. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Che to introduce our guests for the first item.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. We have some exciting progress update to share on the Fletcher Sustainability Program, which includes field trip for all students at no cost funded by grants, as well as ongoing student feedback through ad hoc structure. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Principal Ms. Howell and Teacher on Special Assignment Tammy Wallace.
Thank you. Before we get started tonight, I wanted to appreciate everyone's presence here at our meeting this evening. Good evening, my name is Melissa Howell, principal of Ellen Fletcher Middle School. I'm super excited. I'm sorry it doesn't show on my face, but I am super excited to have the opportunity to share the update of our new Sustainability for All neighborhood school with a choice option. This year is our first official launch of our ever-growing program and all of the wonderful things that come with it. I would love to turn over our recap and update to our amazingly hardworking and truly dedicated TOSA, Tamara Wallace. We really could not be exploring all of these options without her hard work and passion.
Thank you, I'm Tamara. The vision that guides our work was developed by a diverse stakeholder group during last school year. We will now just highlight the progress that's been made since officially launching the program this fall. The sustainability focus is for all Fletcher Tigers, so we're trying to have an inclusive environment with our focus school. Students have exposure to these ideas through core classes and the new Wheel strand. Thanks to grant funding from the District Innovation and Agility Office, all 7th and 8th graders participated on grade level field trips at no cost to families. We sort of did a soft opening to try out the field trips last year. Feedback from students was very positive, and many 8th grade students mentioned that this was a highlight of middle school in our recognition night video as they promoted. In addition, what have I done? Sorry. There we go. In addition to teachers incorporating aspects of sustainability into lessons and projects, the theme isn't just for our academic work. Our aim is to take action as well. One area for daily action is in our school lunch redesign. The positive results have come from students managing reusable trays and sporks and milk cups and dispensers and composting their leftovers. Collaboration is happening between the food service employees, PAUSD, Sustainable Schools Committee, and the staff who work with students to maintain the program. Kids are really excited about being this pilot program and their cold, fresh tasting milk. In another venue, to build partnerships, we launched an evening speaker series for students, parents, high school students, and community members. By including programs outside the school day, we hope to build community and foster conversation as we learn, ask questions, and serve together. At our October talk, we collected feedback from participants to guide our future planning. Another exciting collaboration has been with Gunn High School students through their work in the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition. I'm really excited to welcome these passionate and committed young people into my Wheel classes and other community service opportunities and events on campus. They will be inspirational role models and help us connect our work with Gunn and the wider community. Let's see. To encourage feedback and co-planning of the program, we are working with students through a lunchtime ad hoc committee. We appreciate their enthusiasm and willingness to talk to classmates and give direction to the vision and implementation efforts of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. We are a very supportive room tonight, And while it is a tremendous loss to temporarily not have Zoom comments, when it brings more people into the room, it's a very different meeting. So we'll look at the bright spot of that for now, I guess. Thank you so much. We don't have any community comment, so I will just turn to my colleagues for any comments or thoughts. Mr. Darup, Ms. Siegel.
I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. It is very exciting to have a school that every single student participates in the sustainability. And I also just wanted to commend the charge of leveraging student voice. It's very exciting, and I thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to learning more. I think it's like end of March that the committee, is that right, end of March? So I look forward to hearing more after the committee ends and learning about future events. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. This is exactly the type of innovative pathways and thinking that I really appreciate seeing from the district. I know we've discussed this and similar things for a long time, but this is great. And sustainability is such a both important and unique issue for a sustainability school to exist on. It's something we can point to and say, hey, this is something we're doing to help and to educate our kids that really others aren't. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this as we track this going forward.
Student board reps, any comments? Okay, great. I agree with my colleagues. And I think I especially like that, we're in constant conversation at the Sustainability Committee about how can we make greener lunches, right? How can we have less waste? And you're sort of our pilot now, right? You're doing all these things. And hopefully by having that focus there, it'll give us a chance to see what we can do within particular budgets and, with particular resources and whatnot. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that and the feedback from the students. It's fantastic. Thank you. We are excited. Thank you so much for being here tonight. You can keep clapping, we've been clapping a lot tonight, whatever. Okay, so our equity update for JLS, Dr. Austin.
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Conaway to introduce.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. Good evening, everyone. We are pleased to present our routine school update on the site-level alignment with the district's equity and excellence goals. Tonight, we feature JLS Middle School, and here presenting is Principal Chris Grierson. And before Chris speaks, I'd like to express how important it is for our staff and our community to view this focus on equity and excellence as a commitment to ensure that every single student in our district is thriving, that every student achieves, that every student feels like they belong. So we heard tonight that obviously this is a continuing work that we have to engage in, and it requires the community and our internal staff to do that. And our SWIFT plan commitment and our BOC commitment is aligned with that. So we hope to do some additional work, to support the sense of belonging that all of our students feel. Without further ado, Mr. Chris Grierson, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having JLS here tonight. My name is Chris Grierson. I'm the principal at JLS Middle School. Our equity update that I'll be sharing with you this evening aims to convey our site's effort to support all students. And tonight we wanted to share our engagement indicators and how we promote equity through increasing access to support relationships. So we're going to begin with sort of a baseline. First, I think it's important for us to understand that middle school is a unique experience. If you think back on your middle school days, you might have some varied memories. I certainly do. And I think that brings, that empathy brings us to think really critically around a lot of different pieces of data. And so before I get into this particular slide, I think it's important to note that many of our middle school students really prefer to just blend in and be normal rather than feel like they are othered in some way. Many students are very sensitive of their identity, how they fit, and how they are seen socially within our society as well as within our school building. And middle school, if you are thinking about the transition from elementary into middle schools are very different. They're a lot larger, they're more complicated, there's new systems, many new people from different places, and so that does come with a little bit of pressure. At the same time, our amazing students are going through adolescence and something really awkward known as puberty. So that also gives another layer of difficulty to this new environment. And it should be noted that while adolescence and puberty is challenging enough, the added layer of historically underrepresented minority identity also makes things even more difficult. Our presentation tonight is about how students in different demographic groups might experience school, as well as how we support them. So this attendance data shows, out of all of our subgroups, there are really two that jump out at me. One is our African American and Black students, who have the lowest student attendance rate at 90.65%. Followed in second to last is, or second to lowest, I should say, is our Hispanic and Latino students at 95.63%. Also, it's difficult to read in the back, but this graph also shows our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students have the third lowest at 95.89%. This data leads our school staff to investigate which barriers exist that result in these lower numbers. And we do this through having attendance conferences in partnership with our counselors and SAFE specialists. And we've definitely seen immediately how individualized meetings have a very large impact. While we're on this slide, it's also important to note that the size of our populations matter. JLS is a pretty big school with over 1,000 students, only 14 of whom identify as African American or Black, and this data comes from registration information held in Infinite Campus, and only 115 students identify as Hispanic and Latino. We note this because it can be intimidating and uncomfortable to be in a place where you feel like many people don't look like you. So that's attendance. Grades, another very important indicator to consider. We just finished our Q1 grading period, and so this chart reflects that. While we'd ideally like to see a more balanced distribution of letter grades, and I should add that the pretty colors are all grades. A is purple, blue is B. Oh, sorry. Yeah, A is purple, blue is B, C is green, D is yellow, and F is red. You'll notice that the percentage of A's and B's is less in our African American and Black students and in our Hispanic Latino students compared to other groups. This data shows the percentage of grades earned by students in these various groups across our campus. As a result of this information, our school is currently in the process of coming through our Q1 DF data. And this week, our admin and counselor partners will be reviewing our data to take to team meetings to do a kid-by-kid inventory. One new innovative approach for us at JLS this year is piloting a weekly extended team meeting. You might be wondering, what is an extended team meeting? That's where all teachers from the same discipline meet on a weekly basis to collaborate, to coordinate, and to problem solve around students that might be struggling. So picture, if you will, a 7th grade student. They have 7 teachers. All of those teachers are on the same extended team. Those 7 teachers meet weekly to talk about how to arrange their curriculum or how to arrange interventions to support the students that are not yet successful. They also problem solve around not only academics, but also attendance, also mentoring, also the sort of social-emotional component, which we'll get to in the next slide. And again, every week, these teachers get together to discuss students of concern and to coordinate efforts providing support. All right, so this slide, this is new information for us. This information comes to us from the Panorama survey that middle schools took, actually all schools took 2 weeks ago. And so this slide showcases the well-being data for 2 groups, our Black African American students and our Hispanic Latino students, respectively. The survey really helps our students and wellness team to understand how students are feeling about themselves and their lives. Student data which indicates a low or medium risk, that's those red or yellow colors there, prompted an immediate one-on-one check-in with counselors. And I need some help to understand this data, so I'll explain it to you. Hopefully I do a good job. The Panorama survey itself calculates students who self-report no strengths as having a mean topic score of 3.4 or less in any area. So what they do is the students answer questions across these 2 different categories. The 2 different categories, I'm sorry the font is small. The 2 different categories are challenging feelings. So challenging feelings are anger, loneliness, sadness, worry, and frustration. And then the positive feelings on the other side are excited, happy, loved, and safety. And so depending on how students answered a question, and there's a Likert scale, it's a 5-point Likert scale that spans from almost never to almost always, the students' answers result in a calculated number and a designation of high strength, that's that dark green color, strength, which is the light green color, medium, which is yellow, and low, which is red. And so those indicators help us to have meetings immediately with our counselors and our mental health therapists with students, just a one-on-one check-in to help them to see what is bothering them, to try and understand why they answered the survey questions the way they did, and to design a support system for those students. With this information, we also cross-check with grades and attendance that I showed you earlier. So we are able to actually tailor a support plan for every individual kid, depending on where they fall within these sort of domains of concern. All right, this is my favorite slide. Next slide is access to relationships. Again, the previous slides were more about our factors of engagement, how we monitor that, but this is really important. The New York Times actually published an article at the end of September, which basically said, if someone wants to believe in themselves, they have to feel like they matter. I don't know if any of you saw that, but the thing that I took away from that article was that people matter in two different ways. They matter by feeling valued, but they also matter by bringing value. They contribute value to the place that they're in. And so they add value. If you can be valued and you add value, then you definitely matter. And it's our aim at JLS to make sure that every student feels like they have a true sense of belonging and membership, and that they feel like they matter. So we do a few different things in order to cultivate that type of connection. The first that we do is we have a lot of communication. We have a lot of correspondence to families from teachers, counselors, and our admin staff. We have deliberate invitations to something called office hours. That's the period on Mondays and Wednesday afternoons when students seek individual help or support from teachers who are in their classrooms. And then we also have strategic invitations to homework habitat. Homework habitat at JLS happens 4 times a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And we also have a mentor-mentee program, which is where an individual staff member meets with an individual student once a week to check in and see how things are going for them. But new this year is we have 3 awesome clubs. We have a Black Student Union, we have a Unitas Club, and we have a Polynesian Club, Poly. Someone asked me if that was a typo for Pali. No, it's a Poly Club. And that is for our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students. These 3 clubs, I think, really empower our groups of students to feel like they belong, that they have purpose, that they have a powerful sense of connection and membership. And they are in the mix. You can see that that other graphic on the right is all of our clubs at JLS. There's around 30 of them. And they have weekly meetings in which they discuss things that might be bothering them, concerns they might have, as well as events that they want to plan. Our Poly Club recently arranged some Polynesian dancers to come to JLS. Our Black Student Union is planning a speaker to come to JLS, and our Unitas Club is also planning a multicultural event at lunch. So all of this visibility helps, right? It builds a student's I would say, strong sense of self, their positive feelings. Those previous feelings that I mentioned before, feeling excited, happy, loved, and safe. So I'm really happy to share those clubs with you. Yeah, again, just to sum up, these clubs are really designed to foster a strong sense of pride, belonging, and membership through visible service projects around our campus. So this slide is sort of what the students do, how the students engage with the relationship piece. But on the back end, sort of behind the scenes, our staff also are being strategic in how they foster relationships too. And with this slide, I wanted to begin with an activity that we started last year where individual teachers create equity goals for themselves. And these are a few, I'm just gonna read them. One teacher writes, I would love to bring more student voice and experiences, as well as a more real-world applicable examples that we can build into math programs. I would love to build more discovery problems that highlight issues. Another teacher writes, whenever possible, the teachers include literature by authors whose racial and cultural background reflects that of our students in our rooms. A third example, I want to improve connecting new content to culturally relevant examples and metaphors from students' communities and everyday lives. So again, our staff is really thinking about how we engage and how we cultivate those relationships with our students. In addition to the equity goals, we also have 3 amazing malls And that acronym, if you're not familiar, stands for Multicultural Affairs Liaisons. There are 3 staff leaders that meet with me regularly, and Lana, to talk about what we can do at JLS to improve our equity efforts. They lead staff meeting activities as well as suggestions for departments and PLC work. And then, of course, our awesome counselors and admin partners, they work with teacher teams to review our DFI lists, which I mentioned earlier with our grades. And then we have our counselors and SAFE specialists who are reviewing attendance plans. And of course, our student voice is extremely valuable as well. So we're surveying them through the Panorama survey to understand how they feel about our school climate along the way. So I hope this plan sort of illustrates our school's proactive stance and our priorities around increasing engagement and access to relationships. It's relentless work, but I would say it's the very best work. We're in the business of creating belonging and membership, and it's really fun. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You can clap for him too. But no pressure. We have one public speaker, and he's almost always right there, so I don't know where he is. Stephen Davis? He's like in a new spot, or he's not here? Or? He was. Okay, well, so for what? The gun concert. Okay, so we have no public speaker. So we will go to, this isn't an action item, just a staff report, so community comment. We'll start at the end of the table again.
It's short. I remember subbing at JLS a couple years ago, and then I emailed Mr. Gerson. Hi, Mr. Gerson. My name is Shauna Siegel. If there is an English opening at your school, I would love to teach at JLS because of the magic that I see happening on your campus. So I saw it then, I see it now. Thank you for your incredible work. Also, I just really wanted to highlight, I was writing it down, weekly extended teams. As a former teacher, I'm like, why didn't I do this? As a former department chair, I will acknowledge, why didn't we do this? And so I really want to commend you because when I write it down, it just makes sense. But thank you for having the vision and putting it in action and adding that extra accountability piece, which is the equity check-in with the teachers. I just really appreciate all of it and want to thank you. I continue to be inspired. Thank you.
Okay, anything?
I just wanted to say thank you, and I have just one comment. I want to thank you for putting in the information on the well-being survey. I think that's hard information to see, that there are students who report no strengths. Do you happen to know how those results compare with other student groups?
Yes, we did look at that data across student groups, and I can provide more detail if you're interested, but the comparison wasn't as important as the immediate prioritization of the students who responded with low or medium answers. So that was the real purpose of that survey, was to sort of ignite the response from within our wellness team. If I remember correctly, I believe the African American and Black students was about the same as our white and Asian students. I believe the Hispanic and Latino numbers were a bit lower. But again, the whole objective in that survey was to elicit that check-in, that one-on-one check-in.
And I assume we're checking in with all of those children.
We are. Every single one that was red report. And also yellow got an immediate check-in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Student board reps, any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. I had a similar question. It's heartbreaking to see that, right? Yeah, and it's great to see that those clubs exist specifically because they are such small populations at the school, and so an opportunity to bring kids together in that way. As a parent of a middle schooler, what you presented is what I see every day, and it is so nice to see the way you represented it is exactly our family's experience in our middle schools. So I really, really appreciate seeing the very kid-by-kid look, from grades to self-reported data to attendance, looking at the whole picture and bringing it together. And I really appreciate it. Yet again, another amazing school-based equity update. Thank you so much. And no other comments? Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, look, we're ready for the consent calendar. I believe Mr. Collins has something to pull. I don't know if anyone else does. Approval of the consent calendar. Mr. Davis is still not here. Is that correct? Okay, so we have no comments on it, so.
Do a motion with my thing. So
Yep.
I move we approve the consent calendar as presented with the exception of item C.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments, any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Student board members?
I asked, they said no. Oh, I didn't ask them for a vote, though. Could you, okay. Great, thank you. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, okay, so we've approved the whole consent calendar with the exception of C, so that'll be our first action item. Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
So for item C, I would like to amend the language simply by appending and the assignment of Board Member Durap to the Coverly Ad Hoc Committee in place of Board Member Collins.
Right, do we have a second? Second? Second, okay. Any discussion? Any concerns? Okay, student preferential board vote. Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, okay, that is approved. So we're on to our only action item, which I think I'll give it to you, Dr. Austin. You can pass it on to wherever you want to pass it.
All right, Ms. Chow, you got it.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. This next item is to award the contract for the work on the fire alarm system for Gunn High School, and we went out to bid for this. We had 2 qualified bids, and we are asking this evening to award the bid to the lowest qualified bidder, which is Aram Electric.
I get the feeling that maybe Mr. Collins has a comment. Wait, let me make sure there's no comments on this. I don't think there are. Okay, there are not. Do we have any board comments? No, no, no. Mr. Collins?
Move the item as presented.
I'll second.
Great, it is on the table. Great, colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Fantastic. We are on to discussion items. 7A, reimagining middle school math.
All right, I'm going to get us started before going to Dr. Lopez. Just jotted down a few notes. And first of all, when you're in a moment, sometimes it feels like you're the only people in a moment. Discussions about math are not new or unique. And I'm talking beyond Palo Alto, I'm talking in general. I was a principal at La Sierra High School at a time when the standard pathway was not Algebra 1 in 9th grade, it was Algebra 1A in 9th grade, Algebra 1B in 10th grade for a lot of students, which for anyone who's not a math person meant that Algebra 1 was divided in half, and that one semester took a year, second semester took a year. So what happened at that point, it was a total best practice. That was sweeping the state, this idea of spreading it out and going slower for everyone. But what it really did when we talked about pathways is if you failed one of those semesters, now you're in algebra or as a junior. And let's say you had to repeat it twice. Well, you will never get to Algebra 2, which was the Cal State UC standard. You might not get to geometry. So I came from that model. And that is obviously a dinosaur model now. In fact, it's essentially banned. You really can't do that now. But at one point in time, that was the gold standard. That's what you did. I was the high school principal of Laguna Beach High School, very high achieving school district and high school. And Geometry H honors was essentially the honors pathway for 9th graders. Now, there was a handful of students that started in honors Algebra 2, one of which was my own son. And for some people that think I'm against acceleration in any way, that's just not true. But I do want to talk about the complexities just for a second here. But when we were having discussions at that point back in 2006 about should you or should you not have screening for honors courses, in that particular case, honors geometry. I did lift those requirements. We gave an information test, and then parents could override if their kids fell short and move forward. And the math department hated that idea. And the math department chair was a good friend of mine. And I still remember, we still laugh about it, in a department meeting, he came to me with data, and he's very much a data person. And he said, well, look, Dr. Austin, we were right. Half the kids, almost exactly half, got a C or less, which in Laguna Beach meant they got a C because you didn't get less than a C. And I said, well, Mr. Hammer, that's great data, and I want to give you a different thought. Half the kids we would have screened out just got an A or a B. So who's right? Let me start right there. That's the biggest problem, I think, with math discussions. Everyone wants to be right. There's not a right. There's two data points that can be seen differently by two different people. And we kept working through that, and it's just a process. I was at JLS yesterday, and I appreciated seeing Mr. Gerson here as I'm getting around going to all the staff meetings at all of our school sites. And I stopped towards the end of the meeting because in my hour of conversation, probably 40 minutes of it was spent on math-related topics as determined by the staff. And I had to have a perspective talk with them. And I checked my understanding afterwards with Mr. Gerson to make sure I read it correctly. But what the teachers at the middle school were telling me is essentially, we are accelerating too fast. And while we accelerated all students by essentially a full grade level, that probably means a whole bunch of kids that would have been screened out, who would have not been in these classes, not only could have, but should have, and are doing well. But conversely, there's a number of students, and we're going to share that data with you, who aren't. I think that's our discussion point, not to accelerate or to hold back, but what I laughed with the group about is I said, how ironic is it that I'm standing here in front of you today and you're essentially telling me that I'm the face of the people that are accelerating, and tomorrow night, I will likely be the face of the people that think we're holding people back. Same kids, same district, same data, same guy. So it is important to remember perspective is essential when we're talking through these issues. I believe strongly there's not a right or wrong. There's degrees of places that we're willing to go, and that there are opportunities for discussion in certain points. Now, to finish up before I turn this over to Dr. Lopez, one thing that I was pretty sure is that it's been a while since we brought that reimagining math item. That was December 10th, 2019. And the item itself was written differently than we write items now. When I went back to look and see, okay, what were the clearly stated goals, I'd say they might be in there somewhere, but it wasn't all that clear. What was clear is my opening statement that night, and I've transcribed that for anyone who wants it. Happy to share it publicly, but you all have it. Where I thought it was pretty clear. But let's go beyond that. So I picked two board members that had pretty strong comments that night that were very clear, none of which are sitting here right now, but you might recognize a couple faces. And I just wanted to go back because it really framed up what at least the first part of what we were trying to do was. Okay, doesn't mean the finish line, but the first part. So we're going to play these, it's like 30 seconds apiece. So Sarah, why don't you go ahead?
I think that's perfect.
It works so perfectly in practice. We will.
It looks great.
She stopped. She's like, I practice this works. This is not working.
Well, the second one will not be as impactful. If it was only that one, I would do that, but I really want to see the second one. No. Okay. I'd rather not put the video up there if it's not going to work. All right. Here's what Mr. Dauber said, and he was speaking in jest with the reporters that were in the audience. He said, here's your headline. This is about having higher expectations for our students. It is not a question of laning or delaning. And what he was talking about was the advancing of students, and something that we were trying that was compacting the standards, which is a pretty awesome thing. Now the part, and I don't think I've ever been this disappointed in a tech failure. Well, I just don't know how we can get to it. We can't wait all night, so I just can't do it. Is there any chance, or is this just not going to happen?
Just try it. Don't worry about it. Just try it. Just give it a try. There she is. I'm happy to see her. No, the other one. Try the other one. Try Melissa.
Those folks out there who might be writing newspaper articles about this meeting, I would say that the headline is more, PAUSD raises expectations for students and itself rather than PAUSD delays, because, I don't think that's the headline.
That was a pretty accurate quote, I just want to say. All right, let's go to the next one, because the next one really captures the spirit of what we were trying to do and provided a caution for us that I think is very important. So Melissa Baton-Caswell.
Having higher expectations for our kids around math is a really good thing. And to me, that should be the number one objective that we have here. If we do it this way and it doesn't work, I hope we will continue to have that objective. And why I'm saying that is, if it doesn't work, it would be a shame for us to turn around and say, okay, we're gonna have low expectations or medium expectations or just good enough expectations or grade level expectations because we couldn't do it with high expectations.
Well, I'm not sure she could have said that any better. And we're going to be looking at this tonight, and not trying to steal Dr. Lopez's presentation, but we have some kids it's not working for. I think her caution, though, needs to be at our forefront about not letting this backslide. So, Dr. Lopez, why don't you take it from there?
Thank you, Dr. Austin. So as stated previously by school board members, the goal for the Reimagining Middle School Math was for all students, especially our historically underrepresented students, to have access and enroll in higher level math courses. We are excited to share the following data that shows that the goal is actually being met. When reviewing these results over time, it is essential to consider the following context. The Reimagined Middle School Math Plan was presented to the school board on December 10, 2019. In March 2020, due to the pandemic, all students shifted to remote teaching and learning. All systems shifted, I'm sorry. Starting with the 2021 school year, the first cohort of the sixth graders started reimagining math remotely. In the 21-22 school year, our seventh grade students phased into year 2, and our staff and students were brought back safely to in-person instruction. Our students phased into year 3 in 22-23, and our 8th grade students were placed into Algebra 1. This year, our first Reimagining Math cohort entered the grade 9. The following key takeaways describe the successes that 8th and 9th grade students, as to this first cohort, has made several gains through this 3-year process. For example, in the 8th grade, there was an increase in enrollment in Geometry H, and in the 9th grade, there was an increase in enrollment with students with disabilities in geometry. Next, I will have Ms. Ray, one of our standing math instructional leads from Fletcher Middle School, go over the 8th grade math enrollment data.
Is this on? Okay. Oh, thank you. All right. Not good with microphones. Nonetheless, good to see you once again. Math is always tumultuous, I guess. So as you know, we're currently in the 4th year of our Reimagining Middle School Math program. I think it's too early to declare it an actual success or a failure, but it's good to look back on what we're doing and decide what we're doing. I do think we're going to have to make additional look at it repeatedly as kids move through high school. They're currently, our first group of students are just 1 quarter into their high school freshman year. But we're going to look at that. Before I get going, I want to make sure to acknowledge that teachers, our middle school math teachers, worked really quite hard to implement this new program, especially in the remote issues that we had to deal with. They've changed both the content and they're teaching a class that's made up differently than it has been before. And it's been a lot of work and people have worked really hard. I do want to also thank the district for some increased staffing, some release time allowed, some time for us to plan. And we're going to, just learned yesterday, we're going to take a release day for our algebra teachers to work on how algebra is playing out. So we're happy for that. I do want to acknowledge we have had growing pains. It's not a uniquely perfect system. We probably are going to have to look at a few things, but we're learning and we're doing what I think is a pretty good job. So let's take a look at some of the data. This is the data, all of our 8th grade math courses over time. So we started back in 2019 when we first adopted this. We had basically two 8th grade classes, a math 8 class and an algebra class. And we also had some students ahead of grade level taking either geometry, algebra 2, trig. That continued up until last year, when magically the math 8 class became 0 enrollment because we no longer offered it. So that's not super surprising that that went away. But it does tell us that we've taken roughly 25% of our students were not on track to take an algebra class in 8th grade and therefore wouldn't take it until 9th grade and would be, taking geometry as sophomores. Now, all of that 25% of our students are on track to, if they do well in class, to take a geometry class as freshmen. If any of those 25 move ahead, we can objectively say that we'd have allowed some of our students to move further ahead than they did before this program happened. And we can look at the 9th grade data. Is there more than 25%, are some of that, is it less than 25% of our students that are repeating algebra as freshmen? If we look at cohorts on the Hispanic or Latino population, you can see that nearly 70% of our students in 8th grade were taking that math 8 class. All 70% of them take algebra now. If any of those 70% have moved ahead taking geometry in 9th grade, we could objectively say we've met some of that goal of allowing those students to take a more advanced math class. Similarly, you see the same thing kind of happens with our African-American students. They were a whopping 80% of them taking math 8. And they all ended up taking algebra now, because there's no other option, of course. Similarly for special ed. Gender-wise. I think this one's a little bit hard to read because the years are not colored very easily, but the first 2 columns are the male and female back in 2020. They're grouped in pairs. And you can see that there's really not a lot of difference between the males and female enrollments in any of those classes. Currently, it used to be much more dominantly male in our more advanced classes, our geometry as 8th graders. If you look at it now, our geometry as 8th graders is, pretty close to the district distribution. We're slightly heavy in males in 8th grade across the district, so it's not too surprising that our geometry class is slightly more male than female. All right, you get the next.
Whoops, so next I will be going over the ninth grade math enrollment data. So this first cohort of students who completed the 3 years of reimagined math are now again in the ninth grade. This slide illustrates that more students are enrolled in higher level math pathways this year than in the past 4 years. Our ninth grade Hispanic and Latino students have increased enrollment in geometry, geometry honors, Algebra 2 Trig A, and Algebra 2 Trig H. Our ninth grade Black and African American students have increased access to enrollment in geometry and geometry H. Our ninth grade students with disabilities have also had increase in enrollment in geometry and higher level math courses. And our ninth grade male and female students enrollment over the past 3 years over time is here in this slide. And lastly is the following is the ninth grade data related to the math placement in accordance to Senate Bill 359 that we have to do every year. So this is the overall enrollment of our ninth grade students in all the course classes at again, in the ninth grade and the high school. So as you can see from our presentation, we made great strides in achieving our goals from 2019, and we're excited to continue this important work here as within our secondary math. Moving forward, I would also like to thank 2 of our board members for bringing up the challenge of honor courses to our attention, and we will be discussing this with our math steering committee to ensure that we're not missing anything, just to make sure that any of that stuff that we may be missing is not becoming problematic for our students. Also, just to make it clear, I have confirmed with both of our high schools that AP Calculus BC is and will remain the highest level course, and we are not adding any additional higher level courses taught by our teachers. And lastly, regarding multivariable calculus, we are in communication with Foothill College and exploring the possibility for next school year for them to offer their course at both of our high schools after school. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. We do have many community comments. Many of them are students, so let's get started with them. There are 24, so it'll be a minute each again. The first ones are Albert Lee, Sid Kolu, and Hong Yi Shi.
In presenting information about lane changes in mathematics courses, our board and district have shown many inconsistencies. According to board policies 6152.1 and 6155, and their accompanying administrative regulations, there are 2 ways a student can accelerate in math at PAUSD. The first option is a student to acquire a teacher's recommendation based on their understanding of the student's academic achievements. This must happen during the first month of school. The second option is to challenge a course by examination. This is supposed to happen in addition to placement tests administered to all students during the first month of school, but we have little information on that process. As we will explain, the first method is impractical given the regrettable widespread reluctance among many educators against advancing students ahead. And the second option is even worse.
Thank you. Sid, then Hong Yi, and Shahan Kamungo.
While we understand this caution from teachers regarding skipping might arise from experiences with overly enthusiastic parents, teachers should not be allowed to judge students' true interest in a subject that they simply hope to be appropriately challenged in. Additionally, teachers may not know students well enough by the end of the first month to determine their proficiency in math. At its worst, this rule is merely symbolic, offering an illusory chance for advancement. At its best, it is fundamentally unfair, making a student's progress hinge on an individual teacher's stance on progress. In our experience, this policy is rarely put into practice. Teachers simply state that there's no way to accelerate in high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Hong Yi, Shihan, and Teta Nakamaya.
The second approach, challenging by examination, seems more balanced on the surface. However, it is even harder to navigate. In fact, according to Mr. Degler, Gunn's math instructional lead, few, if any, Gunn students use this path. A brief interrogation into his path reveals the main issue. The challenge process is both inequitable and opaque. A student can only challenge their course placement twice throughout the course of high school. Additionally, administrative regulation states that if a student is already within an honors or AP course, they can't challenge their current placement. In other words, students may not challenge honors or AP courses whether or not it meets their learning needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Shahan, Tata, Jerry Yan.
So if a student was in Algebra 2 trig honors, but wanted to be placed in analysis honors, they would need to challenge the standard Algebra 2 trig, then attempt to change their placement once the year starts. As by default, a student who challenges Algebra 2 trig will be placed in IAC, the non-honors lane of pre-calculus. Then a student would need to take another test or complete a different procedure to move up to analysis H. In this process, a prospective student can lose up to a month of education. The system undeniably is complex and confusing by design. Moreover, this pivotal detail that a student must first pick the regular course to even be given an option to advance by challenging is buried in a minor clause in the original documentation of the law and shockingly missing from the PAUSD website.
Tata, Jerry Yan, Benjamin Vakil.
Some may argue that because it is possible to skip out of certain classes by taking a UC-approved course outside of school, the acceleration system has been made simple for students. However, this system deliberately ignores the fact that forcing students to take approved courses outside of school is inequitable in itself. While a student may not have time or means to take a structured UC-approved course outside of school, due to extracurricular activities, family obligations, or financial issues, students may be able to find time to study material on their own through guided self-study resources such as Khan Academy. These solutions are far more equitable as they allow greater flexibility for students who wish to accelerate, so only allowing structured UC-approved courses to validate acceleration effectively only allows students with means to learn at a higher level.
Thank you. Jerry, Benjamin, and then Benjamin Yang.
Although there are plans to reintroduce a skip test for Algebra 2 trig honors, students will need to come close to qualifying for the AIME or pass separate problem-solving tests consisting of problems similar to BAMO and AMC exams. This system is inequitable for multiple reasons. First of all, neither AIME or BAMO has problems of similar difficulties of styles to PAUSD. If a student needs to show proficiency in Algebra 2 or trigonometry, they should be tested on Algebra 2 and trigonometry, not completion math. Additionally, only around 3,000 students from across the country qualify for AIME each year. While it would be amazing if every student in PAUSD who excels in Algebra 2 trig honors could make AIME, this is unfortunately not the case. Why should we create a double standard for students who accelerate to a higher standard versus students who do not? Thank you.
Benjamin, Serena Martin.
The attitude towards skipping comes from a culture at PAUSD that deliberately makes acceleration exclusive. ILs and administrators stated that students should skip only if quote, they love math and are feeling unchallenged in their current math placement. Or that students should consider authentic exploration of interest instead of acceleration. In theory, these criteria would allow some deserving students to accelerate while preventing those with unhealthy motivations from accelerating. In practice, we find that this is this philosophy essentially results in a blanket ban on acceleration in high school. As we discussed previously, although acceleration is possible with a teacher recommendation, this policy is extremely infrequently used in practice. Thank you.
Benjamin, Serena, and then Kwan Min Meng.
Another problem arises from allowing students to be deemed worthy or unworthy to accelerate based on their love of math. A student who knows the content in their math class but does not necessarily find it to be their favorite subject should still be allowed to accelerate, as they have already shown proficiency. Regardless, the logic that only leads students who show interest should be allowed to take more advanced courses leads to contradictions. If a student excels in a geometry honors course but does not enjoy the subject, would a teacher force them to lay down the next year? The most logical answer would be no, because this would be depriving the student of the opportunity to learn at their own level. We believe that the same logic should be applied to acceleration as well.
Thank you. Serena, Kwan, and Kishaf Rajmohan.
The natural question that stems from this criticism is how the system can be fixed. We believe that a variety of policy changes are necessary, but it's also important to address the administrators' attitudes around acceleration. For instance, in an email sent to other ILs and administrators, a former IL said that they strongly believe in removing skipping in all forms below calculus, even saying that one of the positive consequences would be that multivariable dies. They also discussed using a loophole with course names to force transfer students to retake math courses. Thank you.
Kwan, then Kishaf, and then Andrew Fun.
Given that instructional leads have control over skipping by recommendation due to administrative regulations around acceleration, having this stance on skipping appears problematic. As someone who has took a geometry equivalent course in China before coming to PAUSD, I was strongly recommended to retake the class. I find it harmful that the reason why this happened was not for my own success, but rather to prevent other students in the district and myself from accelerating. Although I was able to take Algebra 2 and Trigonometry honors in my freshman year, I know another student who did not have this opportunity despite having similar circumstances, and there may be many others that I do not know. This rhetoric directly harms students and should not be encouraged or accepted in the future.
Thank you. Kishaf, then Andrew, then Boris. Nesleben.
I wanted to share some of my own experiences with skipping or laning up in PAUSD. I believe that the district should respect that everyone learns at their own pace, and I don't believe that there should be the terminology or the buzzwords that I've been hearing a lot of: accelerating, racing ahead, or skipping. It's just people wanting to learn math at their own pace where they believe they would learn best. And when students are able to prove that they have reached proficiency enough to move up in math, past their grade level standard, the district should respect this. And if, for example, in my experience, they were not able to give me a spot in Calculus BC, they should be more transparent with the way that they deny me this opportunity to learn math as I went through. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, Boris, Rianne, Kunita.
I first tried to accelerate by skipping Algebra 2 Trig, as I already taken an equivalent course similar to Art of Problem Solving, a reputable online school of mathematics. However, I was told by administrators that skipping this class was not possible, despite the fact that I had taken an equivalent class and showed proficiency. I then tried to take Math 1A at Foothill to get into AP Calculus BC, as Kishore did, but I was also told that the course was full. Despite showing proficiency in the content and following all instructions given by the district, I had to take Analysis H. Had I been placed in AP Calculus BC, the district would not need to provide any extra resources relative to being placed in Analysis H, and I followed all instructions necessary to be placed correctly. As a result, I was denied accurate placing without any way to correct it. Thank you.
Thank you. Boris, Brianne, Alan Jang.
Another concern that administrators expressed was that if MVC is offered as a class, they would need to make MVC the highest math class offered at PAUSD. There are various ways to address this issue. We propose that the course be offered as an elective so that it is not included in the math pathway and thus does not obstruct any students. This concern about the highest math class also ties into acceleration. Of course, according to Mr. Degeler, a student who takes a lower level math course, like IAC, and then takes a higher level course, like BC Calculus, would not fulfill the highest math class checkbox, as they have not been in the highest math pathway. Thus, assuming a student challenges a non-honors course to accelerate, there is no guarantee that PAUSD would consider them to have taken the highest math class available. This could create unnecessary stress for students who choose to accelerate. Thank you.
Thank you. Rianne, Alan, Sophie Wrong.
The overall ambiguity about the relevance and importance of the highest math class checkbox, as well as the ambiguity in determining who meets these standards, leads to further complications. As far as we know, reporting the highest math class a student took is a responsibility for STEM recommenders, who might interpret the question differently. Additionally, to our knowledge, the only college that asks recommenders to confirm this is MIT. If the district is committed to justifying the neglect of the needs and interests of some students due to this requirement, then a standard criteria should be established to determine who fulfills it. Otherwise, this concern simply functions as a way of denying students the opportunity to take MVC on campus during the school day without any justification.
Thank you. Alan, then Sophie, and then Pranav, Paba.
Additionally, encouraging skipping can be beneficial to both students and teachers. As we know, putting students in classes where they already understand the content is unhelpful to the student themselves, but it can also be harmful to the rest of the students in the class. Students who are bored are less likely to engage with class material, which can be an issue for group projects and activities. They can also take up teachers' time by asking for extension activities or individualized learning at a higher level. Shifting the culture towards correctly placing students rather than promising enrichment in lower level classes could also free up time and energy for teachers to use to better prepare the majority of students in the middle who get less attention than those scoring at either end of the distribution.
Thank you. Sophie, Pranav, and then Ezra Furtado-Tuari.
We'd like to break the myth that skip tests should not be studied for. This idea has been used to support not releasing clear information regarding what material is covered on skip tests throughout middle school, and therefore bears relevance to this discussion. Many students understand a portion of the concepts taught in a single class, such as Algebra 1. These students are forced to waste time relearning known information, a deeply unstimulating and demotivating process. If clear guidelines were established for what material would be covered on a skip test, these students would be able to fill in the gaps on their own. They would know what material to learn through other means, including Khan Academy. Systems like Khan Academy are not adequate alone, however. Gun and Pally have specific curricular quirks that would not show on a traditional college preparatory platform, therefore requiring guidelines to be well understood.
I think Pranav, and then Ezra. And then I think we're done with students, but I'll check.
Additionally, the Green Middle School website math section states that skip tests are not a test of potential. Students may be terrific mathematicians, but not yet have been exposed to material. This test looks for mastery of the material that is covered within a year-long course. For students who may have mastered some, but not all of the material that will be taught in a course, but show skill in learning math material, we believe that providing opportunities to catch up on learning through summer homework may be more effective than preventing students from accelerating. This option would allow more students to learn at a level which they feel challenged at. However, in order to provide this material, topics covered on skip tests and in classes must first be given to students.
Ezra.
Throughout this meeting, we've shown conclusively that PAUSD has obstructed and obscured its math policy in many ways. We've seen and shown that it takes a clear and concerted effort by students to create change. To realign PAUSD with the best interests of the student it serves, we will keep pushing for student voice, we will keep speaking at board meetings, and we will keep lines of communication open between students, staff, and district administration. However, the only way that we as a district can overcome these issues is for the district to listen to the overwhelming student voices. We sincerely hope that the changes we have proposed will be thoroughly considered and acted upon by PAUSD. At the very least, we expect a detailed response. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all the students? Okay. No, that signed up. All the students that signed up. I just want to make a note to you all. The topic of this agenda item is middle school math, and that series of comments was not about middle school math. I should have cut it off. I do not like to cut off students. I did not cut you off. But next time, if you're not sure, come to me ahead of time to see where, that was really open forum comments. So next time, if we are talking about a topic and you are off the topic, I am going to cut you off. Check in with me ahead of time to see if this was about like laning and skipping in general, for sure. This was all about our new Reimagining Math, our kids who are now ninth graders, and this did not apply. So it would have been open forum. So we have a couple of, I believe, adult comments. So let's go there. Edith Cohen, I'm gonna call Stephen Davis, but I don't think he's here. And then Adam Shu and William Tu, Elizabeth Fee, and Sumaya. So Edith, you've got a minute.
Okay, so first, this must be called out that this program had failed. In 2019, the problem was that PAUSD was not placing math students properly in math classes, and it wasn't supporting properly the students that struggle. And in 2023, it's exactly the same problem, only there are narrower options. So success is not measured by which classes students are placed at. You can put everybody in calculus if you want, as 8th graders. It's by their actual math achievement. Objective math achievement data shows that the experiment had failed. Our student achievement declined across all groups. They are doing worse than peers at Los Altos and Cupertino, significantly worse. They had worse pandemic decline as well. Both the socioeconomically disadvantaged and the advantaged students are doing worse.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Stephen Davis, not here, right? Okay, Adam Shu. And then William Tu, Elizabeth Fee. Is Adam Shu here? Okay, I'll cross out that one. Go to William Tu.
Just a correction, I'm a student. It is our...
I thought you didn't have a card at all. I think you didn't check off student. I'm sorry for that confusion.
It is to our understanding that PAUSD highly values equity. However, many issues within the math education sphere at PAUSD stem from equity and how best to promote it. We find that the lack of PAUSD support for skipping rather disappointing. A major concern with regards to equity is the necessity of paid tutors and expensive outside resources. Because that is the case, PAUSD should be providing skipping materials to students. Previously, students could request weekly self-study packets that would prepare them for skip tests, but ensuring equitable access to materials necessary to accelerate. Self-study materials would balance the playing field for all students, regardless of their means, while allowing students to learn material that suits their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Fee, and then Sumaya.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Fee. I teach math at JLS for 8th grade, and I was one of the 3 ILs back in 2019 on the math revamp process. I'm here today because I'm deeply concerned about our students who are not finding success in the accelerated program. These students are forced to complete 4 years of math in a 3-year period. They need more support and they need more time to process material. We have no choice and no option for them. My hope at the moment is to see a group of teachers and administrators tasked to work together to refine the process, specifically with a focus on a path for our struggling students, consistent with the plan that we had coming out of 2019, which has not happened due to pandemic and other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Sumaya?
Hello. She said a lot of the things that I was going to talk about, but I have had 2 children go through the middle school math, current 8th grader, and then I have a senior. So kind of experienced both ways that we've had with my senior having been in the slower math, and it was perfect for her. And then my 8th grader now could use a slower math and is really struggling, and there just isn't enough support for him. He also just hear so many comments in class. Other kids are like, oh, this is so easy. Oh, you're still doing this work and we finished it so quickly. And it just really affects him. There's really no other options. At the school, I've asked if there's some sort of tutoring or something. So now we're having to find a tutor outside, which I feel, I'd rather him do other things than having to get a tutor for something that is just beyond him. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all of the public comments. Board colleagues? Usually we just, okay.
Okay. So far, from the agenda to the public forum, this discussion has basically been about whether more acceleration is a good thing or a bad thing. I want to refocus the discussion away from those broader rhetorical positions and consider the actual policy impacts. The report was titled Reimagining Middle School Math, but it also mentioned something that I think is greatly important for high school students, and that's the end of the GOA lane. I think it's really important that we actually address what that removal means for most students, not just those at the margins. I think, first of all, there's a central contradiction between what's being said and what's being done. The background on this agenda item says that we're going to be focusing on the large middle band that's neither far behind nor far ahead. Yet just 3 paragraphs later, it says we're going to cut out the exact middle lane for geometry. That contradiction is a major concern for 2 reasons. First of all, student stress gets much worse when there's no middle lane. Right now, students are able to take the course that's right for them. But when there's only 2 options, students get pushed to the outer ends. As much as we'd love to believe that that's not the case, the reality is that there's a ton of pressure on students, some of it internal and some of it external. With the choice between honors and regular lane, a lot of students who are best suited for the middle path end up being pushed by that pressure to take a course that they aren't ready for. They end up staying up until 2 a.m. trying to study for a class they shouldn't even take it in the first place. That's what happens when you prevent students from taking a class that's right for them. Pressure pushes them on to taking more stress in a higher lane, rather than being normal in the middle lane. But what about the students who do have the agency to take a lower lane and don't have to deal with as much pressure? They also end up in a worse situation. PAUSD is not just an incredibly intelligent district. It's also a highly competitive one. The culture at our schools can sometimes even be toxic because there's a lot of stigma around non-advanced classes. The honors lane has become the default, and if you aren't in it, you're either not smart enough or just too lazy. That's the stigma that exists today around non-honors classes. When there isn't a middle lane, that only gets worse, because now you create a binary between honors and not good enough. Without a middle ground, that only furthers the division and stratification. It means more students have to deal with comments saying, "This is so easy," while they are struggling. The goal should be to support the middle band. For Table 7, 1 in 4 students took GOA the year before it was removed. Its removal pushes them away from the middle ground that we should be prioritizing. If you want to reduce the achievement gap, why are we pushing students further apart? If you want to promote equity, why are we increasing division and stratification? And if you want to reduce student stress, why are we removing the less stressful alternative? Alignment and consolidation for the sake of alignment and consolidation means the impacts on students are undervalued and deprioritized. I ask you all to put students first.
Thank you. No pressure, Chris. Do you have a comment? Right. I mean, usually we have you guys go after we speak, but I know that there was a request to have you guys go first. I think it's important that it stick to the topic at hand. But I hear other questions too that still don't directly pertain to this, but I see how you connected it somewhat. So clearly some questions that maybe you can direct to Dr. Lopez as well. Okay, colleagues, I know you shot your hand up there,
Thanks.
Mr. Drop.
I do agree it's too early for us to call this a success or a failure. I mean, we haven't seen all the data. It's fairly soon. We won't get the geo data till January, right? So I think it's important for us to wait and see. You know, I appreciate the issue here. The question really in my mind has always been, how do we support high expectations for all of our students without creating disparate outcomes? And, you know, the way to do that in my mind has always been, you know, I think folks know that I've been a strong supporter of this particular method, which is ensuring that we're building a floor rather than having different ceilings. But I hear the students who came today and have been commenting for a while. I hear the families who say that this has removed an option for students who aren't able to succeed in the accelerated, you know, the high expectation pathway we've set for everybody. And I know that we have some students who didn't do well. I mean, my thinking hasn't really changed, but I think it has evolved in the sense that I want to be more open to whatever pathways and solutions are going to support our students and prevent disparate outcomes in a way that is still, you know, in fidelity to equity. And when I say equity, I mean making sure that our most underserved kids are not falling through the cracks, that they have the same opportunity for the same types of high achieving outcomes. Make sure that we are not creating a system that's going to contribute to a culture of stress. At the same time, I think that Dr. Austin's right. The collective thinking on acceleration has changed over time. It's evolved. Our thinking as a district has evolved in the time that I've been on the board. And we've basically just been trying to do what we can to make sure that we can support all of our students to succeed. It's too early right now for us to know whether this was a success or a fail. I'm open to seeing more and hearing more from folks as long as those things are going to support you know, the wellness of all of our students. Then I'm committed to being open-minded. So I would like to propose that we create an ad hoc committee in January after we get the geo data. An ad hoc committee and I'll volunteer to be on the committee, to talk about the data, to dig into it, to really see, is this working? Is it not working? What are the tweaks? Someone mentioned, you know, check-ins to make sure, and our former colleagues mentioned making sure that we are always being true to the purpose, which was keeping high expectations for all of our students. And so I would like to propose that so that we can also, and then have, you know, the type of stakeholder feedback that we have on our ad hoc committees and get a wide perspective as we continue on this path we set ourselves on a few years ago. So that's my proposal.
When you say geometry data, you mean first semester grades?
Yeah.
Okay, and you suggested for January, so if I hear other interest in it, then certainly we could take that up in agenda setting since we have time to deal with it. Thank you. Ms. Siegel.
I was hoping to listen.
Okay. Ms. Ledemaric?
No. Let me clear this up.
I know, right? He's like,
sicko.
I did. I do want to just say thank you to staff first for this presentation. So, you know, one of the most useful pieces of advice that I ever received from my business consultant was to define the problem before you start problem solving. And he would say to me, a problem is the difference between where you are and where you want to be, and anything else is just whining. And I love that idea of just being really clear about where you're going. And the problem reimagining math is trying to solve, as has been talked about here, is the racial disparity in high school math placement. And we're not the only district in California with this problem. Everybody's very familiar with the math placement law, Senate Bill 359, which was specifically aimed at rectifying this exact problem. And I think as the clips, thank you for playing those clips of Mr. Dauber and Ms. Batten-Caswell. Those clips really made it clear, you know, that unlike the state math framework, our approach at PAUSD was not to slow everyone down, but to speed everyone up, to raise expectations, as they both said, by making Algebra 1 in 8th grade and Geometry in 9th grade our standard pathway. So I ran for school board in 2020, which was right after Reimagining Math went into effect. And during the campaign and after, I had countless conversations with people in person, over the phone, over email, who were convinced that our approach was not going to work. They sent me articles and studies and lots of data, talked me through the research, made valiant efforts to convince me that the kids we were trying to help were not going to succeed, and the kids, in the process, we were going to hold back other kids. And my response to them was always the same. I reminded them of the specific problem that we were trying to solve. So before reimagining math, it was great to see a parent speak who's had kids in both systems. I also have had kids in both systems. Before reimagining math, kids were tracked into accelerated or non-accelerated math after 6th grade, so age 11 or 12. And kids in the non-accelerated lane ended up over a year behind kids in the accelerated lane. And they would not get to calculus in high school unless they somehow figured out how to skip. Either they did summer school or they took class on their own, something. So in effect, what that meant was when kids were 11 or 12, we decided which math class they would take when they were seniors in high school. So people, a lot of you have probably heard me say this before, but I'm gonna say it again. Children enter middle school as elementary school students, and they leave middle school as high school students. That is a lifetime within a lifetime of a child. And some kids take longer to mature, to figure out what it means to be a student, to learn how to study, to take accountability for their own achievement. Our old system did not allow for that vast, beautiful variations among children. Instead of nurturing and respecting every kid's unique path, we penalized the ones who took a little longer to transition from being kids to being adolescents. So I would say this to all the people I talked to, and I would remind them that the problem we were trying to solve was to get more kids into geometry freshman year. And I would say, I understand you don't think it's gonna work. We think it will, so let us try and hold us accountable for doing it. So the data we looked at tonight makes it very clear that we did it, we achieved that goal, we solved that first problem that we set for ourselves, and we need to acknowledge that and we need to celebrate it. Now, all of that being said, no one in this room, and certainly not on this board, thinks that just getting kids into geometry is sufficient. We obviously have to make sure that they succeed when we're there. But as my colleague just mentioned, we don't have enough data to know that right now. We can't solve that problem tonight. We can't even identify if we have a problem to solve right now. When it comes to analyzing student outcomes in geometry, we can have a lively conversation about SBAC scores and CASP and what they tell us about these students as 8th graders. But we have to see those first semester grades at least in order to really begin to evaluate how kids are faring in geometry. So once we have this data, we can start to identify if there's a problem, and if there is one, what exactly is it and how do we solve it? So I agree with my colleague. I would like to see this data back as soon as we can in 2024. And we can discuss when that makes sense at agenda setting. My personal feeling is I don't see why we need to create an ad hoc committee until we know that we actually have a problem that we need an ad hoc committee to solve. So I would vote on holding off creating the committee until January, until we see that first flush of data. No, but we can talk about that more. Can I have one more set of comments, which is the problem that we can identify right now. What? Wait, there's more. The problem we can identify now is that we do have kids struggling with algebra in middle school. That's very clear. And our challenge, as we heard Ms. Betten-Caswell say in that clip, we got to figure out how we can better support these students without reverting back to the old system and recreating the problem that we just solved. So we can't go back to lower expectations because here's the thing, newsflash, these kids were struggling in middle school math before reimagining math went into effect. And the old way of slowing them down and grouping them together in lower lanes helped some kids, but for other kids, it didn't prevent them from struggling. What it did was keep that struggle relatively hidden, and it was kind of easier to dismiss it as like, an unfortunate but inevitable reality of public schools, right? Some kids are good at math, some aren't. We separate them by lane and by expectations. That's exactly the opposite approach that we take with every other subject in middle school. English, social studies, science, teachers have to be skilled at differentiating instruction for kids with vastly different skill sets. And there's vastly different skill sets in math. There are vastly different skill sets in writing, for example. I mean, there are kids who come in, they can barely put together a paragraph. And there's kids who look like they could be writing essays in high school already. And we build into the structure of curriculum and classes the assumption that all students can and should be able to perform at a certain level, and that it's our job as a district to get them there. So I would argue that another accomplishment of reimagining math is that we are no longer excluding math from our foundational assumption of what middle school students are capable of. We aren't removing the struggling students from the standard pathway like we did before. We are instead talking about them right now at this board meeting. We're talking about how we can improve that standard pathway to better serve them. And that's a good development. But now that we've made the development, we're having the correct conversation, we have to make sure that our middle school teachers are fully empowered and resourced to support all students. I don't think it's reasonable to expect that every single 8th grader will begin 9th grade in geometry. But I do think it's reasonable both to assume that they're capable of it and to remove every barrier we possibly can that might prevent them from accessing their academic potential. So it sounds like our middle school teams are already talking about it. They have some ideas. I see a thumbs up. I'll leave that problem solving to the experts. That's not our job up here. But I just will ask Dr. Austin that we keep close tabs on this, that we check in with the ILs, we make sure they're fully supported, that they have whatever they need, because we don't want to go back to lower expectations just because we have some kids who are struggling. There are kids who are not going to make it into geometry, and we're going to have to deal with that. But there were, as those charts showed us, a lot more kids who were not making it into geometry before. And I'm sorry, 75% of Latino students not making it. We know some of those kids. We have caught some of those kids, and we're getting them there now. And we can't go back to giving up on those kids. So please, let's support them.
You done? Mr. Collins.
I really enjoy following Ms. Ledermerrick because she says such interesting things. I mean, I don't always 100% agree, but I always 100% engaged and interested in what she has to say. So thank you. Thanks for that great report, Guillermo. I think most people know this, but it bears repeating. The structure of middle school math isn't a decision that the board makes. We're not being asked to make any decision today, and we didn't in 2019. This isn't policy, this is implementation, and we look to our leadership team and our faculty to find the best ways to arrange and sequence courses. I do think it makes sense to give staff some specific direction in areas and process and along the lines that Mr. Durup mentioned, and I'd be supportive of that kind of approach because I do think there's more work to do here, and not in the context of my remarks, not so much on reimagining math, which I think they actually have in good hand, but on dealing with some other unaddressed issues that we're hearing about. But in terms of the current program, I'm really glad that reimagining math was undertaken. I think it was originally conceived, and I think I was involved in kind of raising this as an issue back in 2016, because it was a sore spot for as long as I can remember, and probably long before that. And there were two big issues that were being addressed. One was that 6th grade math was basically considered like a holding place. And persistently, students and parents complained that 6th grade math was unchallenging to kids who had paid attention in K through 5, and that their kids, in fact, many kids lost interest in math because they found 6th grade math so unchallenging and so uninteresting. It was basically review. And the other was, as Ms. Ledermerrick mentioned, that we were failing to challenge large numbers of students and get them in a position where they could succeed in more advanced lanes in high school. So I think both of those were issues that we were very cognizant of and looking to solve. And I think, I think we've made progress on both of those. The increase in course enrollment, I think, is obviously good. The needle clearly moved, and it moved a lot. I think that was a primary objective of the initial effort, along with fixing the problem in 6th grade, to get all students in algebra by 8th grade. I think of that as phase 1 of this effort, and I agree, but I slightly disagree with what Mrs. Lederer say. I do think that that was an objective. I don't think it was the ultimate objective. I think as you mentioned toward the end, or toward the middle of the end. You did, the end of the first part. That's okay. The increase, I don't necessarily see course enrollment as an end goal of itself. For me, I think most people feel this way. Seeing kids in more challenging courses is good because I expect it means they're learning more. So the question is that actually really happening? Grades is one way to measure that. Another way is CAST scores. We obviously can't, so I looked at CAST scores because that's data that we actually have. You can't look at CAST scores in isolation, I think, as the presentation mentioned a couple of times. That's always true and never more true than now. COVID set back the entire state, the entire world, especially in math. Since math is something that most people learn almost entirely in school, and school was disrupted. So we can only judge our results by comparing them with others, which is I think we should do with everything. If we compare our results for 6th to 8th grade math to state averages, and this goes beyond the data that was supplied in the report, this is analysis that I did, you'll see that most of the subgroups in our district are doing the same or better than similar groups in the state versus 2019. That is to say, while almost everybody's scores went down, ours included, our scores have gone down less than scores in the rest of the state comparing demographically similar groups of kids. So that's true for white kids, that's true for Asian kids, that's true for low-income kids overall. All three of those groups are doing better now versus 2019 than the state average for those subgroups. One group I think that's good news. I think that shows the resilience of our families and the resilience of our program. One area that isn't true for, though, is low-income Latino kids. There, we've actually gone down a fair amount more than the state average. We are down 10 points for meet and exceed grade level for 6th through 8th grade versus 5 points for the state. Now, that seems like a significant difference, but let me put that in perspective in a second. I'm not sure what's happening there. I think it bears looking into, and it sounds like, this is directly aligns, I think, with what we're hearing, is that there are some students who this program is not working for, and they're put in struggle. As Ms. Lederer mentioned, as other people mentioned, we had plenty of kids in that boat before. It's not like that this program has created that group of kids. That group of kids also struggled before. It's just that now as a business consultant probably said to me once, when you lower the water level, you expose the rocks. And so now, since we've upped the ante in terms of getting people to, putting challenging work in front of all students, we see very clearly the students who are struggling the most. Obviously, we need to do things to address that. But I don't view it as a failure of the program that we exposed the nature of the problem. That's actually a feature of the program, not a problem. So I think of that as phase 2 of this effort, is figuring out what adjustments we need to make to address those specific weaknesses. And as the faculty members mentioned in public comment, I'm sure there are things that we can and should do to adjust our program to address it. I'm sure faculty and staff are already working on that, and I have no doubt we will make progress on that problem. One thing I'd like to mention, I'm not sure that we will find the actual answer in middle school. I think my hunch is that we are looking at a problem that originates before middle school. We simply see it more clearly in middle school as less prepared students hit the wall as the courses get more challenging. You see that exact same trend statewide. So my suggestion is that we actually put a major effort into our elementary grades, where the foundation for academic success is laid. Our math results for elementary low-income Latino kids, those same kids who did less well on CASP in middle school, is equally disappointing. Only about 26% of low-income Latino students in grades 3 through 5 are at grade level. There's actually a higher percentage of students in middle school, low-income Latino kids at grade level than there are in elementary school. So it may be that the middle school is actually doing a heroic job accelerating kids who have not been successfully prepared in elementary school. So we're saying, hey, you're doing a bad job. These kids aren't doing that great. They actually may be doing a heroic job, given that the kids are below grade level when they arrive in 6th grade. So I think it may be, we don't want to limit ourselves to just looking at middle school to solve this problem. I suspect that when we really examine it, we will find that if the foundation is not laid properly. A friend of mine has a good analogy. Foundational skills are like the foundation of a house. If you have a foundation, you don't have much. You can't live in a foundation. But if you don't build the foundation right, your house is going to fall down. So you better pay a lot of attention to foundations, even though the foundation by itself isn't much. And I think that's absolutely true here. Finally, I do hear concerns, I think we all do, about the opportunity for some higher achieving students to accelerate further in middle school. Some do today based on the so-called skip test. And in some of our neighboring districts, there are even more who do. There are students who are learning math outside of school and essentially accelerating themselves. I tend to think, me personally, that there's less at stake here than some others seem to. I don't see huge advantages to accelerating in middle school, but nor do I see large downsides from allowing students to do so who are truly motivated to do it. I definitely hear families and students who want this, and some of whom at least, are prepared and making sacrifices to put themselves in a position to do so. So my sense is that we should find ways to permit more students to accelerate in middle school without compromising our current approach. I think we've got an approach that we've put in place. I think it would be crazy is a strong word. I think it would be imprudent to discontinue an approach that's been in place for 4 years that is accomplishing at least some of its important goals. You can bring me geometry results from January all you want. I'm not going to change my mind that 4 years during COVID, we got this far. I think it would have to be disastrous for me to think that it's the right idea to pull the plug. I think the team needs time to tune up something that's as difficult as this. But I think we can make changes in acceleration policies that are independent of this overall program. I do think we want to find ways to support student achievement, which might look different for different kids. That's our job. So I hope staff will look at this and, as Mr. Drop said, involve faculty and families in the process and maybe come back with some recommendations. We want to set floors, not ceilings. So sorry to go on for so long, and thanks.
There's some long comments today.
Yeah, this is a long one. And thanks again for this report, and thanks for all the excellent work on reimagining.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Siegel, do you have anything to add?
I just want to echo Mr. Collins' comments. I agree regarding acceleration in middle school to find ways to permit more students to accelerate without dismantling our current structure, to examine ways to do so, and to examine changes in our acceleration policies. I also do want to recognize the month-long advocacy of our students. As a former high school English teacher, I've not only been impressed with the students' courage to engage in public speaking, as well as the writing skills, the persuasive strategies. There were vocabulary words that if you saw me on my computer, I had to look up. And then there were citations. And I want to commend the self-advocacy. I want to thank Ms. Ray for her presentation, for her many years of teaching, and I want to thank Guillermo for the report. I am supportive of an ad hoc committee starting in January. I would definitely like it to start in January rather than push it off. I would encourage allowing, if I wasn't sure, if they would be included, but I think student voice is very important. In the Fletcher Sustainability Committee, key takeaways, it was stated, it is important to give students a voice in building the programs they are part of. So I think it would be good to include students. And sorry, I'm looking. I also want to add that in terms of students who are struggling in 8th grade math, that we use the resources that we have to put into our 8th grade algebra. We ask our teachers, and I trust that this is already happening, and I'm just encouraging it to happen, that if more supports are needed for teachers, that we give them those supports. It's not for me to decide what supports, but that I encourage more supports to ensure that the teachers are given what they need to have it be successful. I'd mentioned in the last board meeting when we were looking at budgets that I had seen while subbing that students in elementary school, I saw a need for math support there. And I want to echo Mr. Collins' comments that we focus a lot on elementary school math, and the elementary school teachers can be the ones to decide, and the principals and the district what is needed. And I wanted to thank Elizabeth Fee for speaking and for your decades of teaching. And I also wanted to comment that in 9th grade, there are almost twice as many boys and girls in Algebra 2 Trig. And given that there are systemic issues that hold back girls in STEM careers, I would like to look into the imbalance there, have the district look into that. So thank you, Mr. Collins, for your comments. Thank you, all board members, for supporting it. I am very happy to see that we are raising the floor for all students. I want it to be successful. It is important that, it's been a long meeting, but the mention, I believe it was Ms. Vladimiric, that if you lane a kid too soon, it might prohibit what growth there could be. So I'm glad that we're raising the floor for all. To make it be successful, we need to ensure that teachers have what they need. And I am very happy to hear that algebra teachers got a release. I support any type of extra support that teachers need to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief. This has been a long item. Thank you so much for this. I appreciate you referencing back to what the goal was at the beginning, because clearly for that problem, we have definitely neared the goal, right? Not in all ways. There's still work to do, but we've made a huge difference in a time that we hadn't made a difference before. I've heard a lot of different suggestions. It all sounds like staff work to me. So I'm really interested in hearing, I don't know how often the Math ILs Steering Committee meet, but I'd be interested in hearing their thoughts. It is clear that we have middle school folks here who have aired some of those concerns, voiced some of those concerns. Agree that, laning kids too soon clearly disadvantages a particular subset. I am really interested in seeing the first semester grades for geometry, but more so, and I know this is still a ways away, I'm really interested in seeing Algebra 2, how they do, right? I mean, we put a whole lot of kids in algebra that typically didn't do algebra in 8th grade, and how they do in geometry does not necessarily connect at all to how much they understand the algebra that they just had. So I am curious to know how they do in geometry, but I'm also going to be really curious to keep following this next year and see, did our Algebra 1, our 8th grade algebra, prepare them for Algebra 2 Trig or Algebra 2? And to me, that's going to be our real big provider of information to know how successful this was. So yeah, this is a long process, right? Looking at each of these. I think each of the benchmarks is important, but to me, really how the kids are doing in Algebra 2 is going to be a big marker. I hear that there is a percentage of kids, I think you guys said it was between 10 and 15, that were not finding success in algebra. And we heard from a parent speaker. And I, based on even Ms. Fee's comment, it is clear that our staff, our teachers, our ILs are taking that seriously and have concerns. And hopefully our steering committee, our ILs and teachers can continue to think about what that looks like, right? I don't want us to create another lane, and yet maybe it's conversations with each of those families, right? To say, hey, we think you can handle this and we're ready to support you as much as we can. But if it feels really bad to be here and be doing this and you're interested in an alternative something, we'd like to talk to you about that. But not just the teachers deciding, this kid can't do this, but hey, are you up for that challenge? Some kids are in that class and they're not doing super well, but they're really interested in continuing to try. Other kids are in that class not doing super well, and it's making them feel really bad, right? So I think that it's not even just looking at what the outcomes are, but how they're feeling. Some kids are not scared of a challenge and of a real big challenge, and other kids, it's really it's making them feel bad about themselves. And so there's a difference, right? So I think also talking to the families and the students about how they're feeling. So this all sounds like staff work to me. I hope you continue doing it. It is clear you will continue doing it because I hear these conversations happening. But please bring to us some suggestions on, hey, for this small percentage of our students, but not insignificant, right? They all matter. What do you think is the best recourse? What is the best alternative? And maybe it's a couple different things. I don't know. I'm always interested in elementary math. You have not brought us recommendations for elementary math supports in that way. I would be curious to know, and I'd be curious what our elementary school teachers and principals think they need. We have had them focused on ESRI for 2 years now, laser focused, expecting a lot of them. This is our 3rd year, expecting a lot of them. I don't want to pile more on, but when they feel like they're ready to take on supports in whatever way makes sense to you all, let us know, and I'm happy to support it. And that is all I have. Okay, Mr. Collins?
I think Ms. Siegel wanted to go.
Okay.
I just forgot a quick thank you, because after I thank the students, I wanted to thank the instructional leads at Gun and Pally for holding a lunch meeting with students and coming to speak here at a previous board meeting to share your views based on decades of teaching and experience in our district. It's a long day being a teacher, and I just really wanted to thank the teachers who have come out and the aisles who've come out after very long days of teaching to speak here. So I just wanted to include that in my thanks. That is all.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Darup, who had made a suggestion about a specific action, which was to form an ad hoc committee, I guess, in January. Could you, could I ask you to just move back so I can see Mr. Darup, what we're doing? Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make eye contact with him, we were just doing it. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to follow up on that or turn that into a motion, or what we want to do with that.
What I'll do is I'll ask agenda setting to decide how to agendize it in January, and I'll follow up with agenda setting and remind you in January. So then we'll get it on.
That's what I figured.
So, can I just float an alternative proposal and we can just see how people feel about it? Which is, I'm not sure, we can discuss it in January, or we could just give staff direction now to do it in January. Because we know the grades are coming, and if we already know that we want to do it, then I don't know what we're going to discuss in January. I don't want to sift through grade reports in January and decide whether to do a committee or not.
Well, I'm not sure that we can identify the exact scope of the committee's charge now until we see the data in January, because I think these committees do better when there's a lot of specificity, and at least in this area where we've already said this is a staff deal, and what my proposal is and our proposal is to inject some board involvement or board member involvement into that process. I think we ought to be very clear on what the charge would be. So if you have a proposal for maybe a charge or a scope, then maybe I can't wordsmith it right now at 10, but I'm open to hearing.
Yeah, well, I like you, I'm very hesitant to wordsmith stuff from the dais because we tend to do a bad job when we do that. But I'm also not thrilled about, waiting till January to, I worry about the clock running out on stuff, because January for this crew is like practically the end of the year, right? Because they're already focused on next year and it's hard to get new things started. So I'm hesitant. That's my main concern, to be frank, is that if we have a meeting in January to talk about what we're going to do, it's very plausible that becomes a thing for next fall. Did other people want?
I'll weigh in next, and then I'll pass it to Ms. Lettermerick. I don't think it's useful right now to form a committee when we have no idea what the scope of the committee is. I think I'd rather wait until we have that conversation. After Ms. Lettermerick talks, someone can make a proposal if they want to, but I think it makes sense for us to bring it up in agenda setting and figure out when it makes sense to bring it up and when we're going to have data and whatnot. So, Ms. Lettermerick.
I was just going to say, I think one of the trouble we get into with math, and I think we saw it tonight, where it was like, what are we talking about? Can we talk about this now? Is it open forum? Is it this? Is that everything gets conflated? And so I have literally no idea what this committee would be. Like, what are we looking at? Because we talked about skipping, we talked about geometry, looking at grades, we talked about middle school math, we talked about multivariable calculus and accelerated options. So for me, it's just, I don't understand what we're doing, and we get in trouble when we create committees where, especially for, I mean, I think someone mentioned putting parents on it or students, and it's like, then it's just a whole bunch of the people in the room and who don't know what they're doing. And so I get really concerned about creating committees without a charge that's, and I have literally no idea what the charge is right now. And
I don't
I'm
want to make
very
a charge
sick
at 10
and it's
p.m.
10 to 10, and I don't think I could.
We still have a budget to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'll just clarify what I had in mind, and I thought this was what Mr. Drop has in mind, but this is why we have these discussions, because we don't get to discuss it outside the meetings. What I had in mind was the specific problem of creating additional acceleration opportunities for students in middle school. And because we hear about that as a concern, and we've heard about it for a long time, there are limited opportunities. I think staff feels like, I don't know how staff feels, but I feel like that's an area that has not been addressed and that would benefit from attention of a stakeholder group. So that, and I wouldn't, I mean, something I want to avoid to what you were alluding to is I wouldn't want a committee that says, well, here are 5 different problems related to math. Let's put it in a bag and call it a committee. That's a committee, I've served on some bad committees, but that's a committee I wouldn't want to serve on because that committee would have no hope of success. So I'm just thinking of this narrow problem, which isn't going to change between now and January. And just say, give staff direction, go work on that.
I don't get the sense that that was Mr. Drop's topic, which is exactly why I don't want to do this here right now. But Mr. Drop? Yeah.
Well, if we did that committee, I don't see that the charge would be to tell staff to go and work on it. It would be more, because it sounds like this isn't too far from what I was thinking, but a stakeholder group would be less of telling staff to go work on it and more of having staff and a couple of board members and other members that we have on these ad hocs, sure, discussing it, which is different than saying to staff, go work on it. I think there's a distinction.
I thank you for phrasing it better than I did. I concur. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I would enthusiastically endorse going forward with that. And not because I think this is the only problem we have or isn't necessarily the most important. I just think it's one that we need to work on and one that is available for us to work on in the absence of more data on these other things, which we're going to need to evaluate other things related to this.
Okay. My proposal then is to do that, stick me and Mr. Collins on that committee, make us have to deal with it.
Wait a minute.
No, I'm just kidding.
Wait a second. I mean, if you have a proposal to make, if you have a motion to make it.
It sounds like he was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think, yeah. It's a narrow enough charge. I don't know. I didn't have a lot of time to think about it because my thought was a little different before coming here. I'd rather not rush into it. Now, I think I've expressed that I'm willing and open to doing it, and something like it, which I think is, it's good. And I think my colleagues know how I feel on this. So I'd rather not take an action right now, but I will in the future.
What about if we go to agenda setting, the two of us and Dr. Austin, and we talk through this? Because also I think with ad hoc committees, generally the recommendation has come from staff, not from the board. They have like an idea of the problem. So I don't even know if we're like creating a problem for staff to solve that we could talk about it agenda setting and then decide if staff comes forward with a proposal.
I'd be fine with that.
Well, I'd slightly modify that. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think you're discussing it in agenda setting. I would like to see it come back and come back soon so that we can, if the recommendation from staff is we don't think we have that problem, then I'd like to hear about it so we can discuss, but I don't want staff to have a veto over an idea that board members are proposing.
We would discuss an agenda setting. Sorry. People can't hear me. This is not just a conversation between the two of us. We would discuss with Dr. Austin an agenda setting this conversation and have staff come back with some sort of even if the recommendation is no, it's still on the agenda.
Okay,
That's my idea.
I'd like to have that be sooner rather than later because I think this is right for action now.
Got it. Okay, I think we are done with that item. Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez, and to all of our math teachers, ILs, the works, you know, where's our applause, you know? Okay, next is budget development.
Just before we move on, I would be very upset with any other staff member that does what I'm going to do right now, but I'm going to just add one quick thought because I don't want it lost. This is such a mistake. I don't want us to categorically state that a student who had to repeat Algebra 1 in 9th grade is a fail.
No.
Okay, and just one more thought on that. Algebra 1 in 9th grade is the California framework standard. It's where you're supposed to be. And when we look at the grades, and we're talking about where the geometry, algebra 2 and further, I might be as interested, if not more, in the students who are repeating Algebra 1 and how many of those went on to thrive. And I would still categorize those as victories. So I just don't want to lose that thought, and I don't want to say that because a student didn't do well in 8th grade Algebra 1, that was a failed effort. So I just want to, I'm sorry, but I had to throw that thought.
Yeah, I agree. I want to add to that too, that's something you could speak to the math ILs too, as they're talking about more supports for kids. Like maybe there's a conversation in the middle of the year that's like, okay, probably you're going to do this class again, but let's get you as much support as we can this year so you have a good foundation going into your freshman year.
I think that'll be part of the conversation.
Part of the conversation.
So I'm sorry for adding that late, but it was burning. It was burning. And nobody else better ever do that. Just joking.
Okay,
All right, let's move on to budget. Ms. Chow.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to frame this item up by saying that at our last board meeting, we discussed the changes in our budget development process and the benefits of moving our timeline for stakeholder input up a couple months to the fall at this point in time rather than in the spring. We also committed to an ongoing stakeholder engagement process and sharing these developments with the board over the next couple meetings. Tonight's version of the budget considerations reflects ongoing input from our stakeholders. And in looking at tonight's list, there's two things that are readily apparent. One, the current list is certainly more robust. And two, we've added in the cost estimates for each of the budget considerations. And I would say, in fact, this version is so recent, it even reflects a change to the posted version. We had a stakeholder request to provide full benefits to aides working 30 hours per week. And the cost shown in the posted version is the aide cost. We have since clarified this request, and it was actually not intended to be limited to aides, but rather all classified staff working 30 hours per week. So this revised number that we see on this chart represents the full list. And we are using this data because the most current data we're sharing with the board as well as tomorrow at our fiscal advisory committee. Some of the items that are new to our budget consideration chart start about midway down with the elementary math specialist, which was brought forward at the last board meeting, and goes through to the bottom of the chart with staff consideration item for special ed mild moderate increase in FTE at the elementaries. As for the next steps, Staff will continue to collect stakeholder input and share this input with the board. As a reminder, we're very early in this budget development process, and this item is for discussion, not for approval this evening. The governor will release the proposed budget for the state in mid-January. Staff will incorporate these key state data points into budget assumptions document at that time, and then the budget assumptions will be presented to the board for approval later in the spring. So just to frame up what our full process is. And that concludes our budget development item as we have it at this point in time.
Thank you. We have 3 public comments. First one is Fenton Zerlingo, then Emily Lawrence, and Jessica Clancy. Fenton is here still.
You guys get the Trooper Award.
The district has more money than it was predicted to have at this time, and a portion of that money is being spent on special education at PAUSD. As it is said on the agenda for this week's meeting, any special education costs are focused mostly on compliance, as well as increasing hours for already existing positions. Instead of focusing on funding existing and problematic special education systems, and using excess money to further press special education at PAUSD into its unyielding mold, the district should instead use this opportunity to experiment with alternate forms of special education instruction. Rather than continuing to support a broken, unfair system, PAUSD has the opportunity to try out a better special education solutions that have been proved to work elsewhere and may prove to be a better experience for staff, students, and the district as a whole, whether it be hiring more qualified teachers or following a more integrated curriculum. And I hope that PAUSD uses this opportunity to take a step in inviting cognitively disabled students back to PAUSD classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily Lawrence, and then Jessica Clancy.
2 minutes.
Big time.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm the librarian at Barron Park. The teachers and staff at Barron Park are in favor of making Barron Park a 2-strand school. We believe that this is what is best for the students and staff, and if you want to, as you say, start at the elementary level and raise the floor, this is one way to do it. With combo classes, it is tough, as you know, to learn and teach 2 curricula. And when that happens, differentiated instruction is deeply diminished. We are not able to do what we're trained to do when we have to do it for 2 curricula. In the math and reading curricula require an hour a day. Barron Park teachers are so incredibly dedicated to our diverse student body, and that is why we're here. But as hard as we try, our combo class teachers feel that it is not possible to teach 2 grades of math and reading, in addition to writing, social studies, and science fully with combo classes. We feel that all students deserve adequate time in grade level instruction, followed by targeted small groups for both enrichment and intervention. And with 2 strands, us teachers can do that to the best of our ability. This is not just about making Barron Park teachers happy. It really is what's best for our kids. And if you've been to Barron Park, you know how much we love our kids. So thank you.
Thank you. And I expect that probably Jessica's a teacher too, and I just have to note, I mean, it's after 10 o'clock at night.
Yes.
And you are elementary school teachers. So this has been a long night. Thank you for sticking it out.
Yes, I'm a kindergarten teacher. And I am very excited to be here, so thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us Barron Park teachers. Emily talked about the combos, and so I'm going to talk about the single strand issue. Right now we have 2 grade levels that are a single strand, and it's pretty difficult, and it doesn't feel very equitable for the Barron Park community. For one, we're losing our overflow students to other sites, and then we don't get them back, so that's not helping us grow. And we have impacted classes, and we're unable to spread out the needs. So then this results in the teachers having less time for small groups, less time for conferring one-on-one, and less time for targeted instruction. With 1 strand, we are unable to separate the students who, when together, they disrupt their own learning, and then other students' learning as well. And it just feels like teachers aren't really given the opportunity to plan with a grade level partner, which is so important, especially for me. I love communicating and I love planning with others and bouncing ideas off of my colleagues. And we do feel so thankful that our TOSAs, they do have some Wednesdays that we get to come together and they facilitate us learning together. But we do find that it's really important to have a colleague at our site to work with. Is really beneficial for teachers and students. So equity is providing every child with what they need to succeed, and we want to make sure that our school has 2 strands of grade levels, and that would help provide equal opportunity for all. So as a staff, we do want to give our students the best opportunities, access to the robust, individualized, and joyful education, and so thank you for taking this into consideration.
Thank you so much. That is all our public comments. Clap it up, clap it up. Okay, colleagues, there's no vote or anything here. This is just for discussion. Nothing for Ms. Siegel, nothing for Mr. Dora. Everyone got it out at the last item. Go ahead.
So this is really a question. On the Barron Park, I just want to characterize this, make sure I'm understanding what's being proposed correctly and really try to be transparent to the community. So when we talk about making Barron Park 2 strands, my understanding is that the implication will be that class sizes in Barron Park will be substantially smaller than in other schools. Is that, could you just clarify what that means?
There's a couple things there. No, not necessarily. First of all, let's just start there. Next, while we heard the comments about elimination of combo classes, that would not be a primary motivation for this move. We will have combo classes in our district. But what is problematic, having 1 strand is problematic, and it does disproportionately impact Barron Park. What it likely means is that a class that would have been a combo to start or a single strand would start potentially with smaller numbers, but it would go back a little bit to our conversation last year where we would place new families to the district later. Now, that doesn't come without its own challenges, and Barron Park would be an overflow school. And right now, part of the issue is that once we determine it's a 1 strand because our numbers aren't close to even making a combo, that when new families do move in that could have helped to grow the school, they're pushed is now overflow away from their home school, which sounds silly, right? But it does mean you could start classes with, 2 classes of 10, 11, 12, while their colleagues around the district could have classes of 22 or 23. So we would have some built-in disparities that we would hope to fill over time. If the idea is that we're trying to, in essence, prop up Barron Park for a little bit while the new homes are built and developments come in, the approach makes sense. But operationally, it'll be relatively expensive. And I had a question earlier about, is this a negotiable item? It's not. It's an operational item with an expense. But I hope that answers your question.
It does. I want to, can I continue?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. That was helpful. I mean, not surprising. I mean, obviously, if you have 1.5 strands or whatever we have there and we make it into 2, the number of students is per class is gonna go down. Making it an overflow school, I cringed somewhat when you said that. The history of Barron Park, which maybe even many of Anne's nodding because she remembers, but I think even some of the people at Barron Park don't remember because there's been turnover there. And I'm sure the parents that are there probably don't remember, is that was the nature of Barron Park School 10 plus years ago. And we propped up enrollment there by increasing the number of VTP kids there, even though it was the longest bus ride in the entire district. Making it the primary overflow school, which meant that it was virtually a revolving door. There were kids that would come, stay for 2 or 3 months, spot would open up, at their home school, they would return to that school. And so there were, and kids coming at all times of the year, all the time. And so while it was appealing in the sense that, hey, this school seems under-enrolled, we want to give it more enrollment, it was, in retrospect, and in addition, we double concentrated special education school students there, which by itself, I mean, there's nothing, special education students are wonderful. My son attended during that period. But having a high percentage of special education students at the school had an impact on the school culture. That wasn't, I don't think it was an intended consequence, but it was definitely a consequence that everybody noticed. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, is that if we're going to try to expand capacity at a school by adding teachers and then backfill with enrollment from various sources, that creates its own set of problems. And we might want to, I mean, if you told me, and I don't think this is a board decision, I think this is just an operational decision. If you told me, you know what, we're going to make it 2 strands and we're not going to do all those things. We're going to just suck it up and there are going to be 12 kids in a class maybe for a year or 2 or 3, then I could probably live with that decision. I don't know if that's a decision you want to make. But I wouldn't take that off the table, because I think, having seen that other movie about, moving all the kids we could into a school to try to make the enrollment fit the desired size, that wasn't a great movie. So I just offer that cautionary tale.
Any other comments? I just want to acknowledge that what he described is true of any overflow school that we have. I mean, that's what happens. And I think that you all try to minimize the number of kids that are moving in and out of whatever school we overflow to. And I expect that you guys will continue to recognize the impact of any school being an overflow school. But obviously, that's going to happen in every quadrant, right? Or in every area. Okay, I don't have any questions. My one comment, besides thank you, is it's really interesting to see the way you have changed this process and the many, many things that have come up as possibilities. And I'm excited to see what we decide is a priority, based on staff input, on our teachers, our site-based folks that bring a lot of these things up, what our unions come in and negotiate, what you all, decide. I'll be interested to see what sticks. So thank you for doing it this way. I think it really brings up a lot of possibilities, and I'm excited to see what comes next. I think that is it. We are on to information items, which don't have any staff report. Does anybody have any info? Yep, go ahead.
I know it's late. For information item A, I just felt it would be remiss of me not to discuss the 2022-23 results. It looks like we did not meet our 4% goal in terms of the percentage of Hispanic, socially economically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities who are at or above grade level, and that our percentages went down in those subgroups. So I just wanted to make note of that and to make sure I'm sure we are doing lots of work and to keep an eye on it. And I would want to see this data discussed at a later time and understand what systemic changes are being implemented this year to ensure that now I think our goal is 5%. So just keeping the conversation going, as this is an information item.
Any other comments? Okay, I noticed that as well. And I think that there are some of us that think that our local assessments are much more accurate. There's some of us that think that these data are much more accurate. And sort of the gold standard. And when we're going to celebrate growth, we also have to recognize when we're not seeing it. It is interesting to me that we are using both the ELA and the reading data, because I remember having those conversations when we went through it. And they tell us similar things. We also have our iReady data. Some of us also have BAS data. I mean, there's all kinds of assessments. So I think the answer to what systemic things are we doing, it's ESRI. I mean, there's not much more we can be doing, but I am curious to see how that progresses over time by all our different measures.
Okay, since we're already setting the record for the longest meeting of the year, I just wanted to point out there are 3 measurements for ESRI, and this one is the least interesting to me. It is, and we measure the CAS scores based on the ELA overall. That was the presentation back in August. And we originally were measuring BAS scores, which weren't that interesting to me. Now we're doing the iReady, and once we've switched to iReady, I think that actually will be quite interesting, give us lots of data on K through 2 that I think is super, super interesting that we didn't have before. This one is, there are only 3 measures. There's no clear grade level measure on this one. And the staff gets no kid-by-kid detail for this. There's only the aggregated numbers. So there's no cohort tracking on this, no ability to see what's actually, it's hard to analyze. So, it's funny because I've reflected back and it's like, if we didn't have this one, I wouldn't cry because this one doesn't really say a lot to me. But anyway, I just wanted to share that perspective.
And yeah, I appreciate it. I remember this conversation, and this was actually one I did want because I was afraid that ELA, if we weren't making adequate progress in reading, ELA might bury it because kids might be doing really well in writing or in the other measurements. And because this was ESRI, I wanted to make sure we were looking right at reading. Although we cannot aggregate the data, I think agree, and yet I think that that's sort of giving us the big picture. It's not useful looking kid by kid, but it does give us a snapshot of how the group is doing. Again, it's 3rd grade, right? So they're different kids we're looking at, which means there's always going to be some variation. So I don't think it's an alarm bell, but I do think it's noteworthy. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, so we should measure it. Anything else for info items? Okay, board operations. Super quick.
I promise. And I
don't have to extend
I
the
know it
meeting.
is late and it's challenging to share joyful things at this moment. I need to acknowledge and celebrate the Equity and Excellence Alliance workshop with George Valenzuela that I was honored to be part of last week. It was great work happening there, and it was hands-on work. And I want to thank Lana for organizing this workshop. There were aides, there were teachers, there were principals, there were district office staff, there were community partners, and we delved into our SWIFT plan. We weren't talking, we were delving in. So I just really want to thank you. It was great work to help us advance equity within our schools. I also just want to share and celebrate Walter Hayes Library Open House took place last week. I wanted to thank librarian Jennifer Ford for the invitation. I had a wonderful time, and the kids really, really liked when Dr. Austin read his book. I think that got the most laughs. I also want to thank and celebrate the Pally dance team for organizing Dancers Unite. My daughter and other younger dancers had a great time. I want to give a shout out to Pally English teacher and dance team coach Alana Williamson. I don't know how she does both. I just want to acknowledge that here. It was great. And I want to thank the dancers for organizing this uplifting experience, and congratulations to Pally football, who beat Half Moon Bay by a score of 61-23 that night. And this ties into my last and final celebration. While I was there, I got the opportunity to talk to Mike Jacobs, manager of safety, security, and disaster preparedness. I want to thank him for all of the work he does. And while I was next to him near the football field, his child scored a touchdown at that game. And it was just it was wonderful to see. And I just want to thank him for helping us all feel safe every day. That is all.
It's been quite a while since we've had a packed in-person board meeting. I just want to say, Dr. DeBranza, I appreciate you. I know it's hard to be the president and run a meeting like that, and it's been a long time since any of us have had to do that. And you've also been in the middle of a lot over the last few weeks, so thank you for everything you do.
Had a little board operation. Also had a great time at the Walter Hayes Library reading, the library event. And I know there have been other things, but it's after 10:15. I have no idea what they are, so. Okay, quick.
Yes, ma'am. I do have a brief committee report from the City School Liaison Committee, which unfortunately Mr. Darp wasn't able to join us, but we soldiered through. The committee may come forward with a proposal to the respective bodies to consider. It isn't certain that we will, but there is discussion about proposing a potential overall framework of agreement between the city and the district that encompasses the various, we now have what I would characterize as a laundry list of agreements I've made fun of, or I've promised I won't do it anymore, of City Manager Shikata, who once waived his spreadsheet of all the things that they pay us for. But there's a long list of things that we work with the city on, and they tend to have ad hoc agreements, ad hoc financial arrangements, and no oversight. In fact, it would be, I think any of us, including Dr. Rossa, would probably be hard-pressed to even list them all. So there are other places that have created frameworks, some call them JPAs, some just call them MOUs, that encompass all those things and then put together a timeline for renegotiating those things and revisiting them collectively, which might be, I mean, one of the things I say at the committee meeting is it's not always clear that the juice is worth the squeeze. It might be that that was better for us and gave us better institutional memory and ability to have oversight on these things. It might be just, it's a lot of hassle and not worth the trouble. But the committee's wrestling with that, and I just want to give people a heads up that may eventually come our way.
Great. Okay, is there anything else? Good, you sticking it out. This meeting is adjourned.